Oh gosh.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing? What's going on? And welcome to Merchants of Novigrad, episode 13, a bi-weekly podcast where we discuss everything Gwent. Stay with me is my trusty co-host, Thea Beastie, and as you guys can see, we have not one but two amazing guests, the feathered hosts of Birdcast, a Witcher-based podcast, two amazing content creators, the queens of lore, ElisTheThunderbird and Jinzee. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, thanks.
Doing amazing. Kind of. I just woke up. Hello.
A few
You
words
look
to
great.
our viewers, guys. If you have any questions, you can ask them in chat. Thea will be collecting the more interesting ones, and we're gonna try to answer them as we go. Also, if you want to stay in touch off stream, you can follow us on Twitter at Novigrad Podcast, and if YouTube or Spotify is the platform where you would rather watch or listen to this episode, it's gonna be uploaded a few hours after the live stream. So now, on to the first segment. What have you been up to? What's going on?
Well, I moved to Canada, so that's the thing that happened, and that's pretty much all that's been happening because I haven't really been able to do much of anything else. So it's just been streaming and moving, and the house is a mess, which is pretty great. Not gonna lie.
What part of Canada? I think our viewers are gonna be interested in that. It's a big
Ontario.
country.
Yeah, it's huge. This place is. I looked at it, and I come from the Netherlands, so I come from like this, and now it's just. Like, I don't even know. You can't even drive places within an hour. It's ridiculous. But yeah, Ontario. So where pretty much everyone is. The Toronto place, that one.
Oh, that's a major city, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
It
I
is.
think the largest city in Canada.
And
Well-
is there any difference between the Netherlands and Canada so far that you
Oh.
noticed?
Boy, they don't have anything that I want. It's all my candy. They don't have a bunch of my drinks. They don't have, but they do have a little snow. So I'm okay. For most people, that's a minus, but for me, that's a plus because I love snow. So they have snow. And everyone's super nice for the most part, and they have proper maple syrup. So really, I can't complain. I just trade it. I traded my candy for maple syrup.
Yeah, that's what
That's
I
great.
wanted to say. It's a trade-off. You get something,
Exactly.
and you have to give something. But wait, when it comes to snow, I think that people who come from countries where there actually is snow absolutely hate it. But for us, I'm from the Netherlands as well, having snow is a special occasion. This year, we weren't lucky enough to get any. Last year, there was like 2 days. And so yeah, moving to Canada sounds like snow paradise to
Yeah.
me.
It's been nothing but snow. It's just
But
nothing
what
but
do you
snow.
enjoy the most about Canada? Because for some reason it seems to be the place where a lot of streamers are moving. I'm not sure if you know Alias, she used to stream Gwent. She moved to Canada.
I do.
And
Oh, I thought
know
she
a
was
couple.
already from Canada.
No, she's originally from South Africa and she moved to Canada,
Oh.
also to Toronto. And there is a lot of people who decide to move as a streamer or content creator, and they always choose for Canada.
Okay. Well, I just moved because my husband lives here, so he picked for me, I guess. I just went where he was. And it was Canada, yay.
Oh yeah, we lost Thea for a moment. Somebody
dear.
noticed she was frozen. I assumed she was just sleeping. Just like
Understandable.
Geralt in the Witcher game. Occasionally.
Hello?
And there she is.
Welcome
I
back.
apologize for that. I have no idea.
It's Discord. I have no idea what's going on with Discord these past few weeks, but the quality of the call is not what it used to be.
Yeah, definitely, because our internet is finally fixed here and we have no problems on my side, so I do find it quite odd that I'm still blurry, and I believe Jinzee is also.
Yes, Alice is
I'm pretty
okay,
sure I am.
and Jinzee and Thea are blurry quite a bit. Like a very pixelated, I would say. You can barely recognize them.
Yeah,
As always.
I think it's because I'm in Canada, maybe.
Maybe, but I have to say, a couple of days ago, we did a test call among ourselves, and we had Lionheart who is from England, which is not that far away, and he was also very blurred.
Yeah. It was
So
all
I
of
would
us.
say that's something that has any kind of connection to Discord. Like, that's on their part, on their end.
Weird. All right.
But anyway, other than Canada, Alice, World Masters, the viewer party. On a scale from 1 to 10, how disappointed are you?
I said, because I was being my usual overly dramatic self, that imagine having your hopes and dreams shattered by some stupid fucking virus.
Oh.
Sorry for the swearing. But truth is, nothing really changes because everybody is still going. And we'll just have to gather elsewhere, and probably we'll not be able to take pictures with the girl statue, and we will have to buy the pizza ourselves. So, yeah, like nothing really changes other than that. So
We'll make
I'm
our
still
own.
very much excited to go to Warsaw and meet all the people. That doesn't change.
Yeah, I think Gulo said it's gonna be the most expensive pizza in his life. Because I'm not sure
Wow.
if you guys know Gulo. He's from the US and he's traveling to attend the event, and they canceled it. So he's basically traveling all the way to Europe to eat pizza with a couple of friends.
I almost feel like some of the Seder Project people will just still show up as well if they know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
'Cause
we
I'm
already
pretty
have
sure-
confirmation.
Yeah, so we'll make our own fewer party with blackjack and hookers, basically.
I know that
Yeah,
Baby Joseph
that
is
sounds
trying to
good.
pull something like that, but I'm not sure if I trust his skills to organize an event like this.
Mm.
Yeah, he might take the blackjack and hookers part a bit too seriously, I think.
Oh yeah, he's all about that. Like, if I know him, right now he's gonna promote his Super Seducer stream in chat. That's Baby Joseph for you guys.
Vice versa
That's
says
basically-
as he promotes it himself.
Which part? Thea, since you are speaking right now, what is going on with the book? You are still busy, right? You're still writing. Like, you told me that you are writing
Yes.
a little bit every day.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I have begun writing a novel in high school, and it was always the dream to be a writer, but so we went with plan B and got a law degree. Now we have the degree and we're still writing this darn book, and right now I have no excuse, so I get up in the morning, I start writing, I stream, and I go to sleep. So that's my full-time job, I'd say. And hopefully we get it published somewhere this year. I mean, that is the dream. That is what I do during the day, at least.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe you could tell us something more about the book itself, because
The book?
I know already what it's gonna be, and some people in chat might be aware as well. But Jinzee, Ellis, they are probably not up to speed with what kind of book it's gonna be. So tell us something more,
Literally no
Thea.
clue.
Excuse me, Jinzee?
Start at the beginning because I have no clue.
All right then. It's a young adult science fiction. So I started writing it when The Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner, those are still the in things, if I could put it like that. So I wanted to build on that sort of audience, and it basically results. It's a year and now book, so it's about children all over the world disappearing, and basically what's happening is they're getting abducted by extraterrestrials. So they wake up on a different planet and they have to survive there, and it's all this massive what can I put it, gory adventure survival book where children try not to kill each other and survive.
Nice.
Lord of the
Wow.
Flies on a different planet. Wait,
Right.
more
That sounds
children
pretty cool.
die. If I can
Oh.
put it like that.
All for the
spoilers.
better. Oops.
Yeah, the more deaths, the better, right?
Exactly.
We want children to die. That makes for a great book.
Imagine children not killing themselves. That would be
Exactly.
that would be a sight to behold. But
Yeah,
how
who wants
far
to
are you?
read
How
that?
far are you into the book?
See, the thing is, it's already written. It's about 203 pages, but we want to push it to 300 because no agent will sign me because it's about 60,000 words. They want 80,000 words because they're still following the trend of the Hunger Games, which is a 100,000 word book. So I'm constantly following in the footsteps of something I might never reach, but that's what we're going for. So I'm currently editing it and trying to make it a bit longer with a bit of filler content and more descriptive passages, if I can put it like that. But also not trying to do it overboard.
And
Yeah,
when do
going
you
full Tolkien.
expect it to be published?
This year.
This year.
I won't be waiting much longer, even if it's December, but it should be done before July, and then I'll be working on either self-publishing or getting an agent.
Wow.
You say you want to have it published this year. How about the Survivor? Is it not gonna collide with your plans?
Yeah, Survivor essay isn't happening.
It's not.
I got through to the next round and I had to fill in a little form where I'd have to say things like whether I would ever assault someone, am I a narcissist from 0 to 10? So I think it was a bit, yeah, I was a bit too honest maybe, and I don't think that would have made for a great season of Survivor. So I did not get past that round, no.
Wow.
Yeah, the more you know.
At least you have
Dire.
more time to stream now.
Yeah, sure. I think I dodged a bullet in some sorts.
But speaking of streaming and doing content creation, Birdcast. How did you get the idea of doing a Witcher podcast? And it's not on YouTube; it's only on SoundCloud, I think. At least
It's actually only on Patreon.
on Patreon. So
It is,
how
yeah,
on earth
so
did I listen to it on SoundCloud?
I link it in the Discord that I have, where you basically get into it either you're on Patreon or you're on sub, and then you're just in there forever. The only reason that it's like a quote-unquote paywall is so I can kind of moderate it a lot better. But once you're in there, you're in there. If you really ask me nicely for an invite, then you can also come in. And I just link it there usually. And we kind of put it behind this moderating wall as well because of the whole whirlwind thing that happened when I made it known that I wasn't a huge fan of Netflix show. So if I put it on YouTube publicly, then I was kind of afraid that Ellis and Raven, who is the other host, would be the targets of pretty much anything that I'd had. So I kind of wanted to get ahead of that and just make sure nobody else could target my friends. So yeah, that's why.
But how did you get the idea of actually doing this show? I know that
We
you
just wanted to complain. I'll be really honest. We were talking about the show, and I know Ellis was really vocal about all the things that I was vocal about, and Raven as well. We were just kind of talking in the Discord already, and everyone around it reading it was like, this is really fun to read. So I was like, well, we'll just put it in a podcast, and then everyone can just talk about it in detail, and we can complain about it in detail. I will say that we also try to point out the good things, the positive things, because there's a lot of things that they did do well. But lore-wise, they super missed the mark, and it's kind of hard to talk about that on like public forums or Twitter or whatever, because you make yourself a target. So we kept it close with all the people that want to complain with us. And so we just sit there in a complaining circle, complaining. It's great.
I think people were
Yeah, go
interested in hearing us talking about The Witcher, like in general. And then we had a good topic with the Netflix show, so we decided that okay, when it comes out, it should start like being a thing. This whole podcast idea, and then the show kind of sucked for us. So we're like, okay, we are doing the podcast now, and we are gonna complain.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't really start out with the idea that's like, we're definitely only going to complain. We were going to do a Witcher podcast anyway, and this just kind of showed up like that. I mean, we're probably just going to talk about some other Witcher stuff as well after the show talk is over. Hopefully a lot more positive stuff. But for now, it's really just us talking about the show and just going episode by episode. And we're going to keep doing that anyway. So anybody who wants to vent can just have us do it for them, but in detail and with lore knowledge. Then they know why they're mad. That's great.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of respect for you guys for watching the entirety of this show. I couldn't. I stopped after 2.5 episodes. As a huge Witcher fan, I just couldn't.
Really, Weissenbach, you haven't watched the entire series?
Nope. And it's still progress. It's still progress because when they started showing what is gonna be in the Netflix series, I said I'm not gonna watch it. But then guys like Weevil, Baby Joses, and other streamers convinced me to give it a shot. And after 2.5 episodes, I felt like I lost 2.5 hours of my life for something that I do not enjoy at all.
Damn, that's really interesting. A lot of contrasting opinions. but it's good. It's good to have those opinions, definitely. I
Yeah,
need to be able
I
to
think
talk about it, right?
I think these contrasting opinions come from the fact that people who read the books, who are really invested into the Witcher universe, had different expectations of what the series should be like.
Yeah,
And
I
people who
understand.
don't have that lore background expected something else, and their expectations were largely met. Like, if I didn't know about anything about The Witcher, I'll probably say it's a good show.
I think it's a good show on its own. Like, as a show, I think it's a good show.
Hold up a
And
minute.
I mean, people compare it to Xena Warrior Princess all the time, but I really like Xena Warrior Princess, so that doesn't even matter to me. I mean, people keep saying like, I read the books and I really like it, and then you have me and Alice and Raven who are like, well, we read the books a lot and we didn't like it. And then there's people who only maybe play the games, and then they always go, well, it doesn't look the same as the games, so we don't like it. And then there's people that just come in with this, and I think honestly the majority of the people that watched The Witcher Netflix have never heard of The Witcher, which is really weird. But like when you look at the numbers, I think that's the majority. And
Yeah, it is.
honestly, if it gets more people to read the books and play the games, then I really don't care. Like, let's go get more people, more eyes on it. I think that's only a positive thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see that by the number of streamers who are playing the Witcher games on Twitch, or even Gwent, because they learned about Gwent in The Witcher 3 and they started playing The Witcher 3 because of the series.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I have friends who have never played the Witcher games or read the books, who watched the series and had no idea what was happening. So, according to them, the series on its own wasn't good enough for them to actually be able to follow the story. And even me, who did not read the books but played some of the games, I had no idea what was happening until I rewatched the series and knew that some things were not following chronologically. So, yeah, I can imagine why a lot of people had negative reactions with regards to the series.
Yeah, the timeline
I
is
think-
very specific there. Yeah, I think Jinzee can explain it a little bit better
Sorry.
than I.
No, I think the timeline is mostly confusing if you have read the books, which is weird because the show has a completely different timeline than the timeline in the books. So if you've read the books, you're like, wait, but that's not supposed to happen then. That's what? That's already supposed to have happened. And so then you're confused. And then I think it's around like 6 or 7 episode where you kind of get the whole, oh, they were all in the same place kind of moment, which it kind of messes with your head. And like if you've only played the games, then you definitely have no idea about what's going on. So I think it's unnecessarily confusing in that sense. I'm kind of guessing that won't be a problem in the next season because you won't have the whole Sintra plot going on at the same time. But they might splice in like Melitile's temple and Ciri training and all that sort of thing. So you never know. But I hope they make the timeline less confusing for everybody involved.
I think it's quite shocking for people who haven't read the books to discover that in certain episodes, the Yennefer and Geralt and Ciri timeline could be as far as 80 years apart.
Yeah.
Because Aretusa, that's when Yennefer is still, a teenager. And then you have the Ciri element, and that's almost a century later.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people also don't know that the difference in age between Yennefer and Geralt, I think they're kind of overlooking that every once in a while. Because Geralt looks really old in comparison. Sorry, Henry Cavill, you do a great job, but you look kind of old. And Yennefer in general, I think the way that they showed her starting story, her origin story, I would have honestly really preferred if they had spread that out a little bit. Because they kind of dumped the whole thing in episode or in season 1. And if they just showed us like bits and pieces of it later in season 2 and season 3, it's like, oh, that's what happened. Oh, that's why she's like this. Or that's why she X, Y, and Z. And they just kind of went, this is Yennefer. Enjoy. There's no more mystery left and have fun.
Yeah, that was actually amazing in the books that the background story of Yennefer is like slowly developing. Story after story, you get to know her a little bit better. And in this case, it was like one episode and you know everything.
Yeah, I think in general they leave a lot less to the imagination because in the books you don't really hear much. You have this one section about Yennefer. This is way further in the books, but she's hanging in a tree basically and thinking back on what happened as well. And it's the father who walks out on the mother and yells at her, like, it's your elven blood that just poisoned our child, basically. And that's why she's a hunchback, and your poisoned elven womb, and this and that. And then he walks out to go cheat on her, and the mother cries, hits Yennefer, so it's a whole thing. But she's thinking back on this while talking to a goddess, of all things. And the goddess goes, oh, but you went back, didn't you? Like, do you regret coming back? And it's kind of implied that she killed her parents at that point. But that isn't involved in the story in the show at all. So I'm kind of wondering if they want to add on to it more, even in terms of backstory, or if they really just didn't want to show Yennefer killing the parents. Like, oh no, that would be too much.
Wow, that's very interesting. I never knew that. I think it's time to read the books.
It
Yeah,
is, but
100%.
we are going
Wow.
to talk about Yennefer and her backstory a little bit more in the next segment. But to stay on the topic of backstories, how did you guys actually meet, Elis and you, Jinzee? Because you were doing the podcast, it was on Discord,
think
like
it
we already
was-
know that, but how did you guys... Was Elis
I
just your
think Ellis
viewer?
would be. Yeah, Ellis would be better to explain that, because I think she found me through the videos and the stream and things like that.
Yeah. I think it started with YouTube, and then when I started like watching other people's streams on Twitch, I was like, well, Jinzee actually streams as well, so might as well go give it a shot. And then I even got like a gift sub and stuff, so I stuck around for a while. Then I got to Discord, and apparently I was vocal enough about The Witcher in the Discord in particular, so that kind of how it all escalated.
We absorbed
Escalated.
her into the hive
That's
mind.
a very interesting choice of vocabulary here. But Elis, to pull your tongue a little bit more, you are working on something TA related, and
Yes.
I was lucky enough to see a preview.
Oh yes.
So can you tell us something more about that?
Of course. I like to drop leaks every once in a while, but I'm working on a thing that I call good-looking propaganda, and it's basically an art piece that I'm doing in vectors, if that rings any bells. And it's inspired by the stained glass avatars from Ranked Gwent, but it's like full bodies, and it's 5 of them. It's to sort of hype up people for the 3 players that are going to be on Masters from the team, so Azikov, Damarkis, and Clemon, and the 2 of the analysts, because they're also on a team, Green Cricket and Shinri, and they are like wearing outfits basically inspired by the universe, or more so by what they would be like in the Witcher universe. So like Shinri is wearing like robes with scales, and they're kind of like orange and red, and it looks like fire or whatever. Azikov is wearing like a Scoia'tael outfit, because Scoia'tael is his favorite faction. He has like
Hell
pointy
yeah.
stuff. And Damo is wearing like this really pimpy armor. So yeah, it's kind of, I'm trying to really capture what they would be like in the universe, because frankly I just like to design armors and stuff.
That sounds extremely cool.
Yeah, and speaking
Yeah.
of design and of your talent, I think we can leak it, because normally it's me doing the Photoshop for the episode and trying to Photoshop our guests onto existing Gwen cards, but this time around it was actually Elis.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We outsourced
Wow.
a bit,
Good.
and you
Kinda
can
how she
see
did
it was done very professionally.
Yeah,
a
like
lot for me to learn.
I did. Yeah, I put my face into Francesca, and the thing about the Francesca card art is that there's like a really really big like contrast and a shadow on her face. So what I did was I painted all that on top of my face with like my mouse. I didn't even whip out my my drawing tablet. I just literally just like didn't care.
It still looks very professional. And I'm
Thank you.
definitely happy that you decided to help us out a little bit with these two. But guys, I think it's a good moment to actually start talking about Gwent, because that's what this podcast is about. Of course, it's gonna be a different kind of episode. We're gonna talk a lot about the Witcher lore in Gwent, rather than balance and what's going on Reddit and stuff like that. And the first thing I want to talk about, and we briefly mentioned the topic of Yennefer, is the Wife Wars, the Valentine's Challenge, where as a Gwent player, you had the option to pick one of the sides, and the sides were Yennefer, Triss, and Shani. And you would get some rewards for achieving specific quests. So what do you guys think about challenges like that? Because normally we have a faction challenge where you just choose, Novigrad, Squaretel, Anar, stuff like that. And this time around, we got to choose the Witcher characters. So what do you think about this version of the faction challenge?
I mean, I'm always Team Yennefer, like always. But if I had to pick somebody to actually marry in the Witcher world, it would just be Shani. It would always be Shani, because she's so sweet. I really like that they added her at all, because I kind of felt like, well, if it's the war, then it's always Yennefer versus Triss, right? But in this case, I think Shani did second place, and I think Triss was like last place. I'm super okay with that, because Triss in the books is the worst. She's the worst. I'm sorry, Triss fans.
Here it comes.
Horrible thing. She does some horrible things in the books. Without even exaggerating, she basically magically roofies Geralt. I'm not kidding. Like, she just gets away with it, and Geralt just kind of meets her afterwards and goes, I really don't want to touch that anymore, ever. Like, he basically friend zones her on the spot. And then I don't know if it's because she's a little bit bitter, but then later on, it's kind of Yennefer talking to Philippa, and Triss is just kind of there as well. And Yennefer goes, well, I might die soon, so could you at least tell Geralt and Ciri that I'm not a horrible traitor or whatever? And Philippa's like, nah. And Triss goes, yeah, we're not going to do that. And then she's like, okay, well, don't do that then. But could you at least, like, save Geralt, because he might be in danger? And Philippa's like, nah, let's not do that. And Triss is like, yeah, okay, we're not going to do that. And then she's like, okay, well, at least help out Ciri. At least protect Ciri. And Philippa's like, well, we kind of want to use her for our own goals, so I don't think we're going to do that. And Triss is like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. That's like her whole thing in that entire conversation. So at that point, it was just over. Like, that was the end. If you don't want to help anybody, Team Yen forever.
So, just to clarify, do you think the results would be any different if people knew the story of each character?
I think if they really knew everything there is to know about Triss and Yennefer respectively, I think it would definitely change the results a little bit more in one way or the other. But at the same time, I do think that if you've played The Witcher 3, she definitely redeems herself to some extent there, like a lot. Because Triss has always kind of been a doormat for a lot of people, like Philippa at that point, Yennefer at some point. And in The Witcher 3, she really kind of goes her own way, where she's like, you know what? I am done with guys. I'm just gonna save my witches and gonna go to Kovir and do my thing. If you want to come. If not, then, well, whatever. I guess I'll come to Kaer Morhen at some point. So I do appreciate that. But I think if you read the books as well, you get to know a lot more about Yennefer. And I think that's the one thing that game fans maybe won't get so much, because Yennefer's introduced in The Witcher 3, and you have Triss in 1 and 2, even though in 1 she's also horrible at times. And you don't really get to know much about Yennefer as a person. So what I hear from a lot of people is that Yennefer is this cold-hearted bitch. Like, she's the worst. And, Geralt just kind of gets used by her. But if you read the books, then you know how much Yennefer sacrifices especially for Ciri, but also for Geralt. Like, that's a spoiler, by the way, for the books, but like, she basically literally dies trying to save Geralt, and she almost dies trying to save Ciri as well. So she's very self-sacrificing. She's very tsundere about it. She doesn't want to tell people. It's like, yeah, I love you guys, but I just don't want to say it out loud because it's weird and awkward. So it's like, it's a whole thing about getting to know somebody properly, but you can't really know that if you've only played the game. So I get that. Team Yen.
I have a bunch of things to say. First of all, I think the Wife War, like the Valentine Challenge, is childish and stupid. And second of all, on the topic of if people chose differently, if they knew the first full story, I think not necessarily, because there's a slight difference how these characters are to these people in the games, because they are playing as Geralt, so the characters are not really reacting to the people but to Geralt, and there might be actually a huge difference in how these characters are to Geralt and how would they be to potential like a different partner. And maybe that is sort of the deal maker or breaker when it comes to these like Gwent players choosing their team, quote unquote.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe project what their Triss would be like to them, you know?
Pretty much.
Triss would love me. Totally.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you think it's objectifying them in a way, because even though they both were drawn to Geralt, they wouldn't necessarily be drawn to the people who choose them as their waifus, right? It wouldn't necessarily be compatible. It's really interesting. I like that.
Sorcerers are kind of jerks like that.
Yeah.
I think the only reason at some point that, because this is in the book someplace as well, that the only reason Triss got interested in Geralt in the first place is that because he was with Yennefer, and she saw the whole relationship between them as being super interesting and like different than everything else that they had. So she wanted some of that too. So that's why after a breakup between Geralt and Yennefer, she did the magical roofie and checked what it was all about to sleep with Geralt. Yeah, it's kind of a weird reason to pick some guy. And then the infatuation grew. So yeah.
Damn.
I think the best part is because you said something about Yennefer sacrificing a lot for Ciri and Geralt, and while that's true, I still remember that part when Yennefer was on the verge of dying for Ciri, and Geralt did nothing but just shag Fringilla into at the very same moment.
Well, the reason he did that though is that's actually why Yennefer asks Philippa to basically clear her name. Geralt thinks that she betrayed them because somewhere on the route, when he's traveling with Regis and Cahir, etc., they are followed, so they are found constantly. And he thinks that's because Yennefer basically told the enemy, is working with the enemy, because that would be the only reason why they could do that, because he figured out vampires can't be found magically. They're completely like invisible for magical detection. But they thought that the group that they were traveling with was basically the correct number -1. So whoever was finding them was using magic. And the only person who he thought could really do that was Yennefer. And technically she was doing that, but against her will. Because, okay, and again, this is a major spoiler. If you're like watching the show and you really don't want to know this, then I would really suggest you mute this, because this is a super spoiler. Vilgefortz captures Yennefer, puts her in a torture chair, basically, and magically forces her to make a connection with Geralt. And that way, Vilgefortz can figure out where they are. So yeah, technically through Yennefer, they're found. But it's not like Yennefer's just sitting there having tea with Vilgefortz going, wow, let me tell you where they are now. Like this, you're not going to believe this. She's getting tortured. She's like dying in a dungeon. Her nails are bloody. Like she's having the worst time. But Geralt doesn't know that. So he just like, well, she betrayed us, so I'm going to shag somebody else, and she can go get, well, also screwed, I guess. Until he eventually hears about a thing from where Ciri might be. I won't spoil that. But he kind of figures out where Ciri might be, and he goes on his way again. But he still thinks Yennefer betrayed them. So it's like a whole thing. It's the confusion story, basically.
And Fringilla was also appointed to get as close to Geralt as possible, so it kind of happened for that reason too, in a way.
Anyway, the reason why we talk about these challenges, other than the challenge being part of the game, CDPR for the first time introduced cosmetics based on notable Witcher characters. Right, because right now we got the cardbacks. You have Yennefer, Triss, Shani cardback if you want to buy them. And my question would be, do you think that CPR should just make more cosmetics based on lore, based on characters like Geralt or Ciri, or people that we know from the books and games? Because if you look at the shop right now, there isn't really much lore-friendly stuff there.
I think the entirety of Gwent isn't really lore friendly. So unfortunately, I don't think they really need to care, but I do think that they could get a lot of really cool inspiration from lore if they wanted to.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Shirtless Yorveth, when?
Young Yorveth in a
But
flowing hills.
that's like the easiest money in the world.
I'll buy it.
To be honest,
Same.
I'm one of those people who were really, really upset Yorveth was nowhere to be found in The Witcher 3.
Right? Thank you.
I loved his quest line so much, and Vergen is the most beautiful place in The Witcher 2.
I know, right? Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah.
But speaking of Yorveth and Scoia'tael, other than them being elves that everyone loves, the faction has been consistently oppressive, some might say, or overpowered. And do you think that there's something in the lore that just draws new players to play Scoia'tael?
Oh, for sure.
Honestly, elves. I think that's like the simplest explanation. People love
Yeah.
elves.
It's just, I don't know, like the whole flavor of the faction is, I think, very appealing. Maybe I'm biased, but like there's this whole like the fight for freedom thing going on, and there's the racial diversity thing going on, and people just like fantasy in general, and Scoia'tael is full of like these classic fantasy races, be it dryads or elves or dwarves or whatever. So I think that might be quite appealing to people. I think the faction is quite easy to play too, so that's a factor for sure, but I do think that the flavor makes a lot of that popularity.
And Squirtle happens to be both of your favorite factions, right? And what
yeah.
drew you to it?
Elves.
Elves?
Elves.
I mean, Squirtle in general. Okay, if we want to be super detailed, which we definitely don't, I wrote a whole script about this. It's that deep, but the whole arc of the Squirtle, what happens to them in the world, is just so much more interesting to me than anything else. Because I know that they're kind of the allegory for racism, right? It's the non-humans, and we're gonna burn them at the stake. But they all they kind of do, and they don't have the stereotypical haughty elf thing, where the ones that are the smartest, that are getting the furthest, they're the ones that, yeah, they have pride, but they also see where it's going. Like they know what's happening. They're not stupid. They can be proud all they want, but if they don't fix what's going on right now, then they're dead, pride or not. Which is why I think the whole Yorveth versus Yavin is really cool, because Yavin is kind of an idiot. But he's an idiot that really believes in his cause, and then there's Yorveth, and when you tell him about Yavin, he goes, yeah, oh, that poor bastard. Like, ooh. Well, he's nice, but like I wouldn't hang with him, just saying. So they're these kind of opposites of the same faction still, whereas when you go, for example, to the Eternal Fire, they're all zealots. They're all, I want to burn everybody at the stake, and we all want to go to the Eternal Fire for the rest of our lives. So I think there's just more interesting characters, honestly, in Squirtle.
Yeah, Sapkowski puts an interesting spin on like the classic fantasy elf sort of trope or whatever, and I kind of like that too. I don't know.
Oh, that's really cool.
One thing that
Okay,
people always
makes
forget
sense.
about when talking about Squirtle, it's always the elves. It's always the elves. And I'm just sitting here dreaming about Mahakam being its own faction.
Aw.
I might even want to jump ship if that happened.
I think the problem with Mahakam is very much that the people running Mahakam don't like the Squirtle.
Yeah.
They actually sacrificed dwarves to keep people from joining the Squirtle. So when the Squirtle started appearing, and I'm just going to go answer Oyerfeldi in the chat as well real quick. The elder races aren't really being called Squirtle. The elder races are pretty much everyone up to and including the elves. And everything after that is just new, I guess.
The faction should be called other races.
Yeah, exactly. But the Squirtle kind of use the whole elder races bond, quote unquote, to get people into their faction, right? It's like, you should fight with us because we have to stop those evil humans from doing human things. So they also tried to do this with the dwarves in Mahakam, and the people running the place were not okay with that. Because they like money, and the Scoia'tael taking young dwarves that would otherwise work in the mines to go fight and die for basically for the elves, if we're being honest, because the dwarves were doing okay. That kind of clashed with that. So the leaders kind of got together and said, well, if you want to join the Scoia'tael, then we just abandon you. You're no longer part of us. You can go die. We don't care. We're not going to protect you. Which is when the cleansing of Mahakam basically happened. So the Blue Stripes, if you've played The Witcher 2, you know this, the Blue Stripes went to Mahakam and they purged a whole bunch of people, basically, that were going to join the Scoia'tael and just were killed before they could. Which kind of deterred a lot of dwarves from joining up after that. So most of the dwarves you see were already either exiled from Mahakam or they were in towns and getting mistreated by humans. So it's a very small amount of dwarves that are actually in the Scoia'tael because they're doing okay with humans. Like they're trading. Humans don't hate them as much as elves because they didn't fight with Nilfgaard that one time. So yeah, the elves are just kind of trying to use their bond and sometimes failing.
Yeah, because one thing about Gwent and dwarves in Scoia'tael that is really confusing to me. We got this expansion called Iron Judgment that was somehow revolving around the Battle of Brenna.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Battle of Brenna, the dwarves from Mahakam were actively fighting against Scoia'tael.
Yeah.
While actually being Scoia'tael cards in Gwent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that was really confusing for me as somebody who's really into the lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just the faction should be called Elder Races. That's all there is.
Be. Yeah, for sure. We had this conversation on stream so many times as well. Calling it the Scoia'tael faction is really awkward, especially because they also have things like Dryads, and the Dryads help them, but only when a Scoia'tael comes into the woods, and it has to be an elf because they only really accept elves. And then they heal them, but they don't go into battle with them or anything. It's nothing like that. And the gnomes and the halflings definitely wouldn't want to do that. Because they kind of have their own communities going. There's this one moment in the books where there's a bunch of soldiers that attack a halfling village, quote unquote, and they seem really weak and easy pickings, but the halflings absolutely mutilate them, just destroy them.
Yeah.
They don't stand a chance.
That was such a good moment, though.
Yeah, and they kind of just keep to themselves, right? They have these small communities and don't come into them. We don't fuck with you, you don't fuck with us, and that's it. So to think that they would just join the Scoia'tael because they want to have freedom, that doesn't really happen.
But we were talking about the appeal of Scoia'tael for when it comes to newer and also existing players. Do you think that every faction in Gwent has that kind of appeal? Like, has enough of a background story that is somehow attractive to people, attractive to players?
Yeah. Like, if you like fantasy, you definitely find one faction that kind of matches you or what you usually like. I don't know, like somebody just likes boats, sees Skellige, is like, yeah, okay, fine, good.
Honestly, I think the only one that doesn't really make sense if you don't know The Witcher is Nilfgaard and Northern Realms. Because they're both just armies, basically. So if you have no idea what's going on, they're just like, okay, well, that's an army. And that's also an army. That's nice. I'll just toss a coin, I guess.
Toss a coin to your army?
Oh, Valley of... I don't know.
Murder?
Okay, moving on. Because you said that it doesn't really make sense if you don't know the Witcher books. But if you know the Witcher books, there's one faction that, according to me, makes even less sense, and that's the Syndicate.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how much of a good job CDPR did when it comes to Syndicate? Like, is there even enough lore to build a faction like this?
I think they just wanted to have a crime faction, which... that's fair. Like they probably had ideas in terms of what they wanted mechanic-wise, and then they needed to fit something on that. I don't really think that a syndicate as such would exist, even though they kind of wrote the lore themselves, so they can do what they want, really, when it comes down to it. It's not really a part of the books. But I think if you go just by the books in general, I don't think in Novigrad this would exist, because Novigrad is very much a trade city, and having a syndicate like this, having this many crime lords, would actually interrupt their trades, because they are known kind of as a safe haven. If you think about it, think of it as a Swedish bank. That's basically what it is. If you want to transfer money, you go to Novigrad. If you want to be somewhere safe and neutral, go to Novigrad. Which does make it a good base, but if they only ever operate within Novigrad, that would just destroy the city real fast. And if even Kovir is willing to trade in Novigrad, you know that it has to be safe. So in that sense, it doesn't work. But I really do like that they try to add their own lore. So I don't mind the Syndicate faction as it comes as just a Gwent idea. I think it's really cool that they don't just try to only take from the lore that already exists, because you're going to run out. So if you want to keep the game healthy, you have to write your own.
Yeah, pretty much same. I pretty much agree. I think it's like a cool idea, because when you only base factions on like locations, it starts to kind of feel the same. And I mean, Novigrad is a location, but like the feel and the theme, the aesthetic of the faction is completely different. There's the coin mechanic, which is completely different. And I think maybe at the end of the day, it was even a better pick than Zerrikania, which I was praying for the longest time, but Syndicate is growing on me.
Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of Zerrikania, we were just about to ask, seeing that Syndicate has its own entire faction, and people are often talking about a possible expansion involving Zerrikania, do you even think there's enough lore to build around that? Or what's your opinion?
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
think so. Totally. Yeah. I mean,
Alright.
like we just said, I think if they build their own lore like they did with Syndicates, I think there's even more to go from, because they have like a kind of a loose idea of what Zerrikania is. You have a few details that you do know from the books. And if they just go from, okay, so that's kind of the setting, this is kind of what they do. So they have the whole manticore thing going on, the terrible poisonous things that live there, the flies that eat your brains. There's
Dragon
plenty
cult.
to just reiterate around just the entire faction. I think they can go many places, especially dragon-wise, because they worship dragons in Zerrikania as a religion. So this would be the best time to just add a full flight of dragons to the game, and I would love to see that. I love dragons.
Same.
Yeah, I think that would be very appealing for a lot of players, because, okay,
Yeah.
we say that everyone loves elves, but come on, dragons.
Dragons.
How badass is this?
Exactly.
Though, they did something similar with Ophir, because Ophir is also one of those lands that we don't know much about, based on the books and the games. And they did decide to essentially drop an entire expansion based on Ophir.
Yeah.
Do you actually think it was a good choice? Do you think there's still enough to build around when it comes to like the more known parts of the continent? Or do they have to restore to resort to use, you know, places that we don't really know?
If they use any new place, even if it's Ophir that we barely know anything about, what I would really like to see is that they made like a little bit of a scenario around it. So that maybe they're introducing new cards and new names, new big characters, and you just have a little bit of a conversation with them. It's like, oh, that's that person. They live there. They do this. And it's like, it kind of binds you to those cards a little bit more, instead of, oh yeah, that's X, Y, or Z from Ophir. I guess it's a decent card. Because I think a lot of the appeal from Gwent initially came from people that knew the characters, knew the story, and they were like, okay, I want to play the cards with these. That's going to be amazing. So in terms of Ophir, I did like the expansion, but for a lot of cards, I just thought, okay, they look a little bit bland. I don't know who these people are. I don't really care. Whereas when someone shows up, it's like, it's Regis. Oh my lord. Oh my god, they added Angoulême. That's amazing. You know, you have that reaction. So if they make a new region entirely, I'd really like to see a scenario about it.
Actually, something like that. Like,
Yeah.
we are gonna cycle back to Alice and the any moment.
They have been writing like a little bit to each expansion, but with Merchants of Ophir in particular, there like is a whole story going on. It's just it hasn't been like explicitly explained, but you can see there was like a heist thing going on, You can see the merchants in Skrtel art because Skrtel, like Vernosia's commando, basically attacked them on their way to Novigrad. They were traveling with the Tiger's Eye, the huge diamond. Then you can hear like voice lines from card street urchins from Syndicate, something about a diamond, and there's like these little bits that kind of do make up the story, but as I said, it hasn't been like explicitly explained what the story is actually about.
What would be extra cool at that point then is that you unlock the scenario once you've collected all of the cards from that expansion, and then you just kind of they just kind of flow together into this story. That would be super cool. I'd love that.
The way they could do it is, and I know for a fact that it was in the game files but never implemented, is certain characters and leaders would interact with one another.
Yeah.
So so the idea was, for example, when you used Ciri as your avatar and you played against somebody who's used Eredin as the avatars would like react to one another in a specific way. That was the idea, and it was partially implemented, but never really in the game. It was somewhere in the files. I know that they were testing the idea, but it was never in any live version of the game.
All right. Yeah, I know they do that in Hearthstone as well. So maybe they thought it was too much like it, or they wanted to save it for scenarios as well. I'd like them to add that back in, honestly. That sounds really cool.
All of it is now on the Wikia page for Gwent in the unreleased content section. You can read like all the reactions. There's even like recorded voice lines. All of it. It's pretty funny sometimes. There's like Letho reacting to Yennefer saying something like, I don't know what all the fuss is about, and it's great.
Another thing that I saw is, it doesn't come from CDPR, it comes from the fans. Somebody actually had this idea of making like specific effects for specific cards. So for example, when you played Caranthir, his theme from The Witcher 3 would play or something like that.
Yeah.
Like special effects for like noticeable characters from the games and the novels.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that too.
Yeah, I think right now maybe the cards are a little bit too mellow. And maybe that's because there are so many gold cards, but I'd like them to give them a little bit more, like oomph and pizzazz, jazz hands.
There is something like that they added this patch. So we have this sewer board.
Oh yeah, I saw
and
that.
when you play the Plague Maiden, rats start to swarm out of the sewers. For like 2 or 3
Yeah, that
seconds.
was really cool. I really like that they did that for sure.
That's a really nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw someone in chat talking about the Van Morlehems, and that's actually my next question, because the last expansion we saw things that don't really make sense lore-wise, like vampires in Novigrad, or Ophir cards in Northern Realms, despite, Ophir being like far south to Novigrad, like not even close to an hour. Do you think that adding themes like that to established factions kinda blur their identity?
I actually do. I kind of get why they did it in this case, because Toussaint has vampires, so you can kind of be both. But I think, especially if you're trying to build a faction identity, I think it's good to keep them separate. And especially because in Toussaint there's so much else you can add that doesn't necessarily have to be vampires. I don't think it was necessary, and it does kind of make me feel weird to put vampires in a deck for Nilfgaard, especially because they don't have that much synergy just for being vampires at that point. So I don't really know what it does for you. I know that there's a few decks that kind of work with it, but I don't know. It feels awkward. It makes it feel a little bit weird.
Yeah, the way I explained on stream was, lore-wise, theme-wise, it would be just better if those were like nobles, killing each other off to get closer to the Imperial throne. Because we know this happens in Novigrad quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that would have been fine. There was no reason for them to really specifically be a vampire at that point, for sure.
Like, I think they did the vampire stuff to just like open enough room to add cards like Oriana or Detlef to Nilfgaard, because they are set into some, which is part of Nilfgaard. And we already see that certain characters exist in multiple factions at the same time. For example, Dijkstra, who used to be an R card, now it's in Syndicate. And, we have neutral cards that also exist in faction-specific cards.
Philippa has 2 cards in different factions.
Yeah. So maybe that's the idea. Maybe just add vampires to kind of open the way for Oriana and Detlef to be on Nilfgaard.
I think if they keep doing that, honestly, that's just even, I want to say, worse in terms of faction identity. If everyone kind of has the same cards and they kind of go the same way, then all of the flavor that's lost. And I kind of already have this with the Squaretel faction already, because they don't really focus on one thing either. So if they do it with everybody, then I think it might be going a bit too far.
I mean, it's not going to happen a lot, obviously, because they even said that there's going to be fewer expansions moving forward. So, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But looking at the cards and looking at factions as is right now, at the very moment, do you think that these factions are even properly represented lore-wise?
Lore-wise, there could be a lot of changes. And again, I'm gonna just go straight up with Squaretel. They like we said earlier, it should have been called Elder Races. If they were gonna add everybody in there, then it should have just been Elder Races straight up. I think that they kind of have to stretch it a little bit, because like I said, if they don't write their own stories outside of this, then they're gonna run into barriers. So when they made Thronebreaker, I thought that was a really good way to add a story and then add more cards to specific factions. I would have liked to see them do more of that. I know that Thronebreaker apparently didn't do that well, so then they can't really make... I would have really liked the Squaretel story, and then after that, maybe just a Nilfgaard only story. Just do like a whole bunch of different things, and you can kind of explore characters and maybe see some of the story that you didn't see in the books. So I'm kind of sad they didn't do more of that. I think that would have worked perfectly, but I also get that it's expensive to do that, obviously. But if they want to keep things kind of around the same idea, I think they're going to have to write like a lot more lore, unfortunately. Or fortunately, whichever.
And sorry, you go.
There's definitely room for improvement in every faction. Mostly probably monsters, because right now Wild Hunt doesn't really have anything.
Yeah.
Like, Dominance archetype is a fucking joke.
And they're not really monsters if you think about it.
No,
that's also true. That's also true. That's a fair point. But then again, like, the Wild Hunt is kind of a big thing, and The Witcher 3 made it even a bigger thing. And where do you want to put them? Because they're the bad guys, but they also don't exactly fit in Squirrel, and it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, they're kind of a little bit of both, really. I wouldn't even be too upset if they had made them their own faction, but at that point, you're definitely going to have a lot of problems trying to make new cards for them.
Yeah.
So they're weird. I almost would say put them in neutral at that point. Then it can be anyone.
Somebody actually did design an elf faction. So Wild Hunt elves as a separate faction. It took a lot of work, I assume, and there was various iterations of it. But somewhere on Reddit, I don't think I can find it now, there is a post, and it involves 100+ cards. Somebody actually spent a lot of time designing a complete new NL faction.
That's
honestly
insane.
What Bribery says as well. They could just make a dual faction cards as well.
Yeah.
And just not make it only monsters or only Squaretel.
Oh, I love this idea of dual faction cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
That makes sense.
I've always wanted to have, Vryheid units in Nilfgaard. It makes sense.
It would make sense.
It's very lore friendly.
Of course you did, Weisenberg. But, I mean, it would make sense.
Yeah, you could let them die on the board.
Speaking of, if you two were in CDPR and could decide what the new expansion would revolve around lore-wise, what would that be?
That's honestly, I've been championing Zerrikania for the longest time now.
Yeah.
Zerrikania.
I love the idea of Zerrikania. But if I'm perfectly honest, what I'd really like to see somebody explore, at least, is beyond the northern mountains. Because we only get a few dots of information. We get Milva talking about the great archers of the northern mountains and the bows that they use, and then there's the white dragons that also roam those lands, apparently. But we don't really get to see more of that. And I would really like to see CD Projekt just go, okay, we have literally 2 bits of information about this. Let's make it do. Like, we'll just make this a thing. And they can do like everything they want. They have like no boundaries because it's a completely unknown zone. It's just like a frost zone that we don't really have either because we have like a desert. We have rainy northern realms, I guess. Nilfgaard praising the sun and the islands, but we have no snow. We have 0 actual frost factions, except for I guess the Wild Hunt, but who even knows about them? So just a blank slate. That'd be nice.
It's interesting. I've thought about like future expansions quite a bit. I've heard some ideas as well. There was like this whole the return of Dagon plus weather plus like Sidaris and all the fishermen there and like Essie Daven card finally Jesus Christ and all that could be interesting. I have thought about something revolving around Lara Doran and like the whole Elder Blood thingy because there's a lot to cover. There could be more Wild Hunt cards. There could be a proper Wild Hunt archetype with that. There could be a lot of new Northern Realms like monarchs and nobles from the past, and a bunch of like Skirota cards, I guess too. And I think Lara is an interesting character as well.
Sure.
So I would like her to have a card in the game. So that's a thing.
Honestly, expansion-wise, they wouldn't be completely remiss to just take anything that happened in the past and kind of expand on it, right?
Yeah,
because like you mentioned the Lara Dorn thing, and there's like all these mysterious stories from the past and legends, etc. And they don't really get explained well, but there's a lot of just interesting stuff that happened that could definitely make a set. Like the entire Lara Dorn, even just what happened between her and Cregennan of Lod, and like the whole conspiracy and the fight with the elves, like that could be a whole thing on its own too.
Sounds
like a
really
lot of maybe maybe like a lot of bandits. Like there could be like Falca's Rebellion thingy going on, or like Witcher 2 nostalgia, Loch Muin, Brands, and like the OG Elven mages and stuff.
Sure.
That could be interesting too.
One thing I was wondering, and it doesn't really have any connection to Gwen, but Jinzee, you said something about exploring, lands like beyond the northern mountains, and there's something I've been always wondering: how come nobody in the Witcher universe ever got this idea of sailing westwards?
I think honestly, in the case of normal people, it's just that they don't have the money or the energy, because especially in like then if you're just a peasant in the Northern Realms, you're sitting there going, well, my field looks like trash. I should fix my field. And then your wife runs out and is like, darling, we should go beyond the Northern Mountains and make our fortunes. And then you turn around and say, woman, shut up. I have to have food. And this is kind of a little bit of this you see in the story of Kovir and Povis. Because people that went to Kovir, which is just before the Northern Mountains, they were all called crazy because Kovir and Povis were wastelands. There was nothing there. So they sent their criminals there, their wayward sons, people that didn't know what they wanted to do with. And the king of Redania was all, okay, I'll send my stupid relative there because I hate him. And then they sat there in that wasteland, and suddenly they realized that, oh, there's gems in them mountains, there's gold in them mountains, there's silver in them mountains. And then everyone went, oh, maybe we should go to Kovir. That sounds like a lovely place. I think I want to live there. But at that point, it was basically a bandit land. There was crime, there was everything. So it wasn't exactly safe. But everyone who had kind of an out-of-the-box idea, they went to Kovir. So if you were a scientist and you were like, you know what, I want to make an airplane, and everyone around you went, that's stupid, we're not going to help you do that. You packed your bags and you went to Kovir and said, hey, I want to make an airplane. And everyone in Kovir went, well, we're all crazy, so sure, why not? Let's give it a go. But that's kind of the type of people that went there. And the initial group was forced. So to get somebody to then also go beyond that, climb over the mountains, and then go to that frosty wasteland where there's dragons, there's be dragons in them mountains, I don't think we're going to get everybody to do that and be like, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
That's a very good point.
There's also like Maybe some people have, like, for example, sailed west, but they have never returned, so nobody
Yeah.
really knows.
Yeah, because they really only know about this part, right?
Yeah,
we know.
pretty much. And same goes, like, for example, getting like east of Blue Mountains. Maybe it's just that dangerous. Maybe that's why people don't really want to go, or they're scared of the unknown. Like, that's also a thing.
Yeah, and I think in large part what we know is pretty much what Geralt knows, and what Geralt knows is mostly what's in the Northern Realms. So there might have been Zerrikanians and Ophirans that did travel that far, but we don't know about that because Geralt doesn't talk to them. Like, he barely knows about it, so we don't either.
Which is very interesting because I see some like hints to how it looked like in our world. Like we like in our world we only focus about the European exploration of the Americas, but we always forget about the failed attempts by various other nations that tried to sail westwards and never made it. Like the Mali
Vikings,
Empire, for instance. They tried a couple of times, and those expeditions never returned.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same way. And it's Ciri actually mentions it because she talks to her friend in Gorsvellen. This isn't in the show, so this is like extra story, I guess. She has this little boy that kind of shows her around Gorsvellen before she goes into Adatuza. And he talks about what he wants, and Ciri at some point prophesizes about him and says that he's going to go sailing to new unexplored lands. So maybe she's kind of prophesizing their version of Columbus, or, well, let's not actually say Columbus. Columbus was not a good guy. Anyway, a world explorer that will eventually go west to figure out what's there, which kind of implies that it hasn't been done yet, but it will be in the future. So if CD Projekt would want to, they could also just make an expansion around this famous explorer that goes around the world and finds great new lands, and they could do whatever they want with that.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a collection of stories written by Ukrainian and Russian authors based on The Witcher, and in some of these stories there is actually a lot about the very same person you just talked about sailing west and exploring some islands and stuff like that. I've never read those stories, but I've heard about them.
I didn't even know they existed, but that's really cool that someone went and fanficked on that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I didn't know exist. For instance, I thought that characters, like we talked about the Merchants of Avir expansion, and you said that, Radeya and Mada, they're just made up characters. But they actually come from the comics that CDPR released at some point between The Witcher 1, The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3.
Oh.
Okay.
Somebody sent them to me. So these characters already existed within the universe as created by CDPR.
Interesting.
I know about the comic from the the entire ending of Jordvet's line, I guess, but I didn't even know about any between 2 and 3.
I think it was either between 2 and 3 or shortly after 3. I'm not sure.
Okay. The Dark Horse comics I can't really add to my canon, unfortunately, though they are very well done. So, like, as fanfic, they're great. I think maybe they added some in there as well, because I think CD Projekt also works with them reasonably closely.
I wouldn't really know who made them, but I know that I've heard about them. Somebody sent them to me. I know they exist, and I know they are official CDPR signed. But there's something else I want to talk about, and that's cards, lore-friendly cards, for example, leaders, that have been removed from the game, and they are kind of not there anymore. Do we want them back in some capacity? Because when they decided to decouple leader cards from animations, all the leader cards, all the art just disappeared from the game. It's not there anymore. And we know that there are cards like, for example, Henry van Atra, or Dagon that did exist in the game before and still kind of wait for their turn to be put back.
Like, for the art alone.
Yeah, the art's really cool. I like Dagon as a character because I like Lovecraft's stories, so I'm a little bit biased. I think it's like the more the better, honestly. If you have more choice, then great. And in this case, because there's just leader abilities and they can make skins of whatever, I think they should just add as much as they can. Like if they have a cool skin, add it to the cash shop and let's go. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Yeah, I was thinking more about cards because every single leader used to have a card, and
Yeah.
these cards are no longer in the game. You can even use them in your account shit where you could just add them as your favorite card.
Then they'd have to have new abilities, right?
Yeah,
I definitely want them back for sure.
I think it's just quite poor that these cards with amazing lore and stories behind them just don't exist in the game anymore.
It might just be saving them for making an actual expansion with, though. Like, especially for Dagon, I know that there's been a lot of talk about that one.
Kind of like they did with Redania.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Like, if you have this already existing lore that you don't really have to do too much extra writing for, I don't see why you wouldn't just use it instead of going, well, here's your cards back, basically.
Yeah, they did that with a lot of cards because when Homecoming first dropped, like all the Redanian cards were removed from NR, and a lot of people suspected that Redania will be its own faction.
Oh God!
And then it was explained that Jason Slama, the game director, got this new idea of doing Syndicate, so they abandoned their work on Redania as a new faction, and they just re-implemented Redania into NR and started working on Syndicate instead.
And then Iron Judgment came out and bamboos at everybody.
I don't think Redania would be a great idea as just a faction. I think, especially for that one, when it comes to making new cards, you're going to get stuck really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
You go, Weisenbach.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is, or ask actually, because every character, every gold card essentially, has a story behind it. And if you could pick a couple of cards that are truly represented to how they are in the books, which cards would it be? Because I remember CDPR saying it's very difficult to design a card that would do something even remotely close to how that character was in the books.
I honestly like the Yordvath cards.
Yeah.
Because they do traps. And that is literally what he does. He even says it out loud when he meets Roach. He goes, he has this whole little evil villain monologue where he's like, oh, I made all these plans, I've set traps, and now you walk into my forest. And it's like, yeah, okay, I guess that's your thing.
I think Angoulême is like pretty representative of what Angoulême was like. She's like, laughing and stuff. I don't know. Like, I like, for example, Regis Higher Vampire because it's like the actual big bat that he is supposed to be, according to the books, not that weird, naked, skinny thing that he's in Witcher 3.
Weird, naked, skinny witchy thing.
No, like,
his feelings.
The vampire design in that game is just like sort of weird.
Actually, do we ever get to see or like read about how vampires are supposed to look like? Because I know that the way we see Regis and Detlef and other vampires, it's not how they normally look like in their natural habitat. They only assume this form to appeal to humans.
I honestly, if we go by the Witcher books, then you would feel like they look like humans in that sense. But they do have their bat form. Like it is an actual bat, and he never takes that form in the games. But when you go by the games, then I think what's most likely is that they all look like the Elder. So yeah, humanoids, but they look a little bit like a skeleton as well, and a little bit like a bat also, in terms of like movements and things like that. Because the Elder has no reason to hide himself, right? Because he's just sitting there in a cave, and if a human walks in, then he kills him. He does not care. So
yeah.
I think it kind of depends on what part you look at. Because like I said, Seda Projekt never uses Regis's bat form, which we know for a fact he does have. But Regis also doesn't talk about it in the books. He doesn't say, well, actually, Geralt, what we really look like is we have 5 tentacles, one of them coming out of our mouth. Like, they don't actually bring it up at all, because there's no reason to. So if you really want, then it's not anti-lore to just say that the games are canon in that sense, because again, it's just not brought up at all.
Okay, a couple of minutes ago, I asked about characters that are properly represented. That their ability kind of shows what they are in the books. There's still a lot of characters that are missing. And which of those would you really like to see in Gwent?
Essie Daven!
Essie Daven, yep. I think we're bonding over that one. We want Essie Daven in the game, say the project. It's important.
Pavel, if you're listening,
Essie Daven is basically an improved Dandelion and also female. She is so amazing. She's the best bard. She's a better bard than Dandelion. I'm sorry, Dandelion, you're really cool, but Essie is the better bard. Period. Everyone agrees. And she was actually a friend of Dandelion as well, and she speaks Elder Speech also fluently, like in the singing voice. Like, Geralt is impressed with her at that point. She doesn't have like the best ending, I will say, unfortunately, but so much about her is just mesmerizing. Seriously, they call her like Little Eye as well. She has the beautiful blue eyes. They have this whole story about her, one entire short story just about her and going and talking to the mermaids. Like, it's such a great story, and her character is just so endearing. And the fact that nobody thought to add her ever, it just
yeah, it hurts.
Yeah,
it hurts.
So as you said, her ending is very anticlimactic, I would say.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Like you expect some great things to be happening in her later years. Well, there is no later years.
Yeah, it's really sad. She, especially because even Dandelion is so impressed with her. Like, he more or less admits that she's better than him. And to know that Dandelion, with all of his bravado, who would just never admit something like that, would even say that she's really good. I honestly feel like his lady love in The Witcher 3 is a little bit based on Essie. Just a little bit.
Not a little bit. She's a straight up knockoff.
I mean, CDPR has a history of doing that, because I've been saying that a lot, but if you look at Triss in The Witcher 1, like half of her lines are borrowed from the books and they belong to Yennefer.
Yeah.
And Jorveth is just Isengrim. Like, no two ways about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Zoltan was supposed to be Yarpen. Because Zoltan in the books is not really that close with Geralt. Like, Yarpen is his dwarven friend.
He honestly, well, he does know Zoltan, but yeah, I think he just meets with Yarpen more often. Which, I mean, in The Witcher 2, they do go, hey, you know, my old friend and all that. But I think they might have chosen Zoltan specifically because he was a little bit more of a blank slate in that case. And I think in The Witcher 1, they did that a lot by, for example, adding Triss and not Yennefer, because they were maybe afraid to do Yennefer wrong. Because she was kind of a complicated character, and they didn't want to get that wrath of the fans at them, which is super understandable. But yeah, they... I feel like they made up for it a little bit in Witcher 2, at least. And Zoltan's a cool dude.
Yeah, I remember watching an interview with Ivinsky, the guy, the CEO of CDPR, and he said they were really afraid of adding Ciri and Yennefer too early. So instead, they wanted characters that are gonna somehow behave like them, they're gonna represent them in a way, but not be them at the same time. And that's how Triss made it to The Witcher 1, and that's how Alvin was added to the game as well.
No, Alvin. We don't talk about Alvin.
Yeah, I see Alvin doesn't really have that many friends.
Alvin.
Hard to explain.
If you've ever watched Alvin and the Chipmunks, just imagine people yelling Alvin all the time in that voice. Because he's the worst. He's a parasite. Oh, Lord. I'm glad they didn't do Ciri and just gave Ciri the entire Alvin questline, because I think everybody would have hated Ciri. And that would have been terrible. Alvin was basically just this whiny little brat that every so often would just prophesize out of nowhere and then just go right back to being a brat. Like nothing happened. Yelling, Geralt a lot, and then teleporting off when Geralt was trying to save him. Oh boy.
Witcher 1 is an experience.
Oh yeah.
It is. The swamp is probably the most depressing and infuriating area in the history of gaming.
Oh my lord! When I remember when I did my lore through on YouTube, I would record in really big blocks whenever I did the swamp because I knew I had to cut out so much of me just walking places again, back and forth, and then taking the wrong left turn somewhere, and then having to walk all the way back.
Yeah, I think the worst part about the swamp is at some point you're like, okay, I've done all these quests, we are done here, never to return, and then you go back to Vizima, and they're like, but you know what, Geralt, if you go to the swamp...
I return to the swamp once more. Oh.
And then in chapter 4 you leave for Murky Waters, and you're like, finally done. And then the epilogue is basically another swamp.
Yep.
They really love swamps. I have no idea what's going on with CDPR.
I mean, I like swamps too, but you know,
not like that. Limits. Oh.
Yeah, I'm not Shrek. I'm Geralt. But bringing it back to Gwent for like 5 seconds. Do you think Gwent has any chance of appearing in the Netflix series anytime soon?
I think they'd have to ask CD Projekt.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they
at
have
this point.
Yeah, they definitely have a copyright on that for sure.
I hear.
I don't know if they would really want to add it as well, because I feel like they're in most cases they're trying to distance themselves a lot from the games, because when you listen to any and all of the pronunciations in the Netflix show, they're all just the stark opposite of anything they say in the games. Like, oh, the game said it this way, we're gonna do it the other way. Doesn't matter what it is, even if it sounds terrible. So I don't know that they want to. I think they'll play cards, maybe. Maybe they'll imply somewhat that it's Gwent, but I don't think they'll ever mention it.
Though we have to admit, the description of Gwent, and it's a very short description, in the books, is absolutely amazing.
I don't think that was Gwent at the time, because they did give it a name, and it wasn't Gwent.
I think it was called Gwent,
Yeah,
which is how Gwent is called in Polish.
I think it depends on where you read the translation, because I think the English one definitely didn't call it Gwent either.
My Czech translation just calls it Gwent.
Yeah, so I think it super depends on the translation. In which case, that just weirds it out for everybody involved. But like I said, even then, I don't think that they can claim it as being a thing in the books to such an extent that they wouldn't have to ask CD Projekt.
The thing is, the show doesn't really care about like details and nuances, and this particular card game that the dwarves were playing at some point is a detail, and I don't think they would even bother implementing it, honestly.
Gitu says that in Polish it's Gwent as well. So I think they could, if they wanted to have a lawsuit, I think they could call it Gwent. I don't think they'd want to go that far though for like a detail. I think that like I said, I think they just might have like we're playing a card game, Geralt. Do you want to play the card game with us? That is the Witcher card game.
Though really, I love the description, because to all people unaware of how the Witcher card game that doesn't apparently have a name is described in the novels, it's basically a couple of dwarves playing cards, cursing at each other all the time. They are shaking fists, and each of the dwarves has a stick to hit the other one, or at least threaten him. I mean, okay, it does describe my Gwent experience when I'm playing against certain decks, but overall, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think honestly they
loses and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I think they just maybe want to make it like a crude game for the dwarves in general, right? Because even if they're playing Gwent, they're doing it with sticks. So instead of a crown, you just get a whack on your head.
Accessories sold separately.
Yeah.
Imagine CDPR just selling sticks in their shop for realistic Gwent experience.
I mean, they are selling like a literal Surus board, so at this point I think people will buy anything.
It's a really cool sewer board.
But you know what I missed there? You know what I mean? It's a cool sewer board, but there should be like some hint of Yule being there.
Oh yes.
Like it's
15 years in the sewers.
they
begging
missed
like a
out on
beast.
that opportunity of Yule just not like casually strolling through the sewers or his shade or anything. He should have been there.
Yeah, for sure.
But moving on, guys. Another question. Like we are talking a lot about CDPR, The Witcher 4.
It's because we love them.
Yeah, we do. Like Pavel, I love you. I love CDPR. Please get back to me. I sent you like 100 messages in the last 3 days. The Witcher 4, because there is that triple A RPG game they're working on, and that it's supposed to release at some point in 2021, and it's not Cyberpunk
2.
I don't think they're gonna release Cyberpunk 2 a year after Cyberpunk 1. But
You'll see.
there is a game in the works, and apparently it's being developed at the other studio, because they have 2 studios now. One is doing the Cyberpunk thing, and the other one is for the Witcher franchise. So they are working on something, we don't know what it is. They only said, and they repeat that every single time, that they want to release that at some point in 2021. Is that The Witcher 4? Could it be?
Well, first of all, don't call it Witcher 4.
Okay,
yeah.
Another Witcher game that's not gonna continue the saga, the trilogy, because the trilogy is over.
I feel like if it was The Witcher 4, and it's because it seems pretty close at that point, like time-wise, I feel like it might be too close to Cyberpunk. I think if they did make another Witcher video game, that they would want to make sure that it is perfect. And currently they're trying to make Cyberpunk 2077 perfect. And I just don't see them as being satisfied, I want to say, with anything less than the best. They've kind of already showed that with every game. So if they're trying to do 2 games at the same time, both of them being that high quality, I just don't think that's what they want. And I also think they'd want to start hyping it earlier, with like little hints here and there, because they always do these little mystery things like, oh, what are we making, guys?
One thing you have to remember is that the reason why Cyberpunk is going to be released this year is it's just dragging on for so long. They started working on Cyberpunk after The Witcher 2, which was 8 years ago. and then they got this idea of abandoning the project. They started working on The Witcher 3, then they realized the new engine that they developed for The Witcher 3 is far superior, so they said, okay, we are gonna develop Cyberpunk on a new engine that's gonna be based on this engine from The Witcher 3, not The Witcher 2. So they started from scratch, and it took years to develop, and then they postponed it once again. So you're saying it's pretty close to one another, but who knows? Maybe they have been working on another Witcher-esque game for years.
I honestly don't think they have enough people for that.
No, and I also think that, especially with the way crunch works in the video game world, I just don't think it's healthy either to have these 2 massive releases basically on top of each other. And really, honestly, like I said, I think they'd want to hype it more, because this is kind of a big deal, and they could link it to Gwent. They could hype that alongside it. They could even hype it alongside Cyberpunk, because everyone always talks about having the reference of Ciri being in the Cyberpunk world. I think that would, if they were making another Witcher game that close to it, that would be the perfect promotion. Like, you can't get better than that. It would be really cool if they had a little reference to Ciri, not as her appearing, because I think they already said that was too much. They didn't really want to do that. But maybe a note or graffiti or something that's really obviously from Ciri, and they're like, well, this is what we're working on next, by the way, and it maybe is a Witcher game. That's kind of how the hype train would start then, and then we'd be like, oh, I found this thing, and then everyone's going to speculate. I was like, what could it be? And then maybe in the next year they'll have a little bit of a showcase of what they're gonna do. So they're very careful. I think what we've learned about CD Projekt over the years, the biggest thing is that they are careful with everything they do. They think everything through in terms of how they're going to launch it, when they're going to launch it, what they're making. And I don't think they're going to change that anytime soon, because it's working. It's paying off. Everything they make is great.
To kind of finish the whole talk about Gwent and the lore in Gwent and the Witcher games, So hypothetically, completely theoretically, if they were working on another Witcher game, what could it be? Because the Geralt story is over. It's done. A lot of people want Ciri, but I think that if they did Ciri, they would have to ignore 2 of the 3 endings.
Ciri's a bit tricky.
Not
Kind of.
necessarily.
I mean,
Because,
unless we
okay.
want an Empire simulator where you just play Ciri
No,
as the
you
Empress.
don't have to. Because this is something that a lot of people seem to just overlook. They think that if they choose the Empress Ciri ending, that she is just going to be Empress Ciri.
That's true,
Lore-wise,
true.
that's just not what happens.
Mhm.
It's never what happens. Because there is a succession of emperors of Nilfgaard in the books, which just goes all the way to Calveit as well. And it basically says that Morven Vorhis becomes an emperor at some point, but Ciri isn't mentioned, and you have the whole fake Ciri thing that they kind of ignored. But Ciri just goes to check things out in The Witcher 3. She goes to see in Nilfgaard what it's like. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but she should at least give it a chance. But there's a really good chance that Yennefer would inform her of what would happen, because Ciri as empress doesn't really make sense. The way Nilfgaard works is money. That's really just it. Because you have the Merchants Guild that is in Nilfgaard that basically stopped Emir as well. So the attack on Sintra, that was the Merchants Guild. They were like, you know what? I think we need more land. And Emir was like, what? No, Emir, we need more land. And he said, okay, well, I guess we need more land. And then he attacked Sintra to just kind of appease them. So if Ciri would want to get anything done in the Empire, she would need approval of the Merchants Guild, because the Merchants Guild is also the reason why Emir dies in the Witcher 3 ending, where, you know, Radovid lives, you don't do the Ciri thing. Emir dies because of the Merchant Guild, because they don't like what they're doing. He's costing them money. And Ciri would eventually start costing them money, because Ciri would want to abolish slavery. Ciri would want to free most of the northern provinces. Like, she would make peace with Skellige. Like, she would do all these things that she, like the good things that she thinks she's doing for the country. And the Merchants Guild would say, okay, where are you going with my cheap labor? So they would already start fighting her there. And then giving up any of the provinces would make them fight her more. And the only thing she could do, like as an empress, she wouldn't have absolute power. The only way she could actually get out of that is to start executing people. Can you see Ciri start executing people who dissent? Like, I don't think she's the type of person.
No, she's not.
Because in the desert, you have this moment where she basically starts dabbling in fire magic. And she sees what she could be. Like, she could be this horrible person, this despot. She sees pyres, people burning, her friends on the stake. And she's like, no, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. I give up magic. I forfeit. Let me leave. I don't want any of it. So she wouldn't be like that. And Yennefer could tell her that, because Yennefer was in politics for the longest time. So she'd be like, well, this is what's going to happen. You can't actually change the world like this. And the better way to change the world would is to be a witcheress and to go and save people that need saving, you know, because you have that power. You can be fast. You can travel through time. You could do all these things that wouldn't help an empire, but would help the common people. So that would just be more Ciri-like. So she would see that, say, okay, that's terrible. Let's not be an empress, and then leave again. Maybe put Vorhis in his place. Maybe say, hey, fake Ciri, take over, or whatever else. And in the other ending, where she supposedly dies, I don't think she dies, personally. But even if she did, it's really easy to write it that she doesn't. I think because the reason that she doesn't return to Geralt at that point is because he was a bad dad. So if Ciri thinks, wow, what a terrible father I actually have, I'm going to hang out on Hawaii instead and not come back. So she's still alive, and she can come back whenever. She just doesn't come back to Geralt. You also don't see Geralt die. So it could be that he has a Super Saiyan moment and just explodes and kills everybody. Like, there are some really clear outs on everything that happens in the ending of The Witcher 3. And I think maybe State of Project did that on purpose. It's like, okay, well, you don't see this happen. You don't have confirmation of this death, or that she does this, or that he does that. So they can go any way they want. So all they would have to do is, if you did choose Empress Ciri, or Ciri quote unquote dies ending, all you have to do is add like one line, be like, oh, well, I came back from Hawaii and I have a tan now. Or actually, being Empress sucked and I'm gonna go do this now. So it's an easy fix. You can go any way you want with her. I think actually the bigger problem with a Ciri game would be how you're going to handle her power, because at the end of The Witcher 3...
Right.
Yeah, no, you go on. I've been talking for ages.
No, it's just she's fucking OP.
Yep.
So how do you really like make a game progression with a character like that? She would have to lose her powers somehow, I guess. She would have to be put against something far more powerful than she already is, but that maybe would be like too low breaking unless she went like, I don't know, traveling somewhere completely off the Witcher world. But yeah, like it would probably be more complicated in that sense than with the endings thingy.
I mean,
yeah, I think a lot. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you said something about Ciri being OP and how CDPR would handle this. I think it's very easy. Just appoint Gwent Balance team to handle this. They're gonna nerf her to the ground. Easy game.
Oh god, no. But you know, all the good Gwent people are actually working on Cyberpunk, so I don't think so.
Just to elaborate on something Jorfaldi said in the chat, which I also mentioned a few months ago, there was a guy who claims that there is another Witcher game in progress. Don't know if it's true, but he did explicitly state that it would not involve Geralt, and it wouldn't be The Witcher 4, but merely take place in the Witcher universe.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps it doesn't involve Ciri at all, but that would also be a very interesting outcome, right?
I think that was an interview actually with one of the CD Projekt people.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thing for sure. But I think in terms of what they said, it's just like it's not going to be a Geralt game. It could still be a Ciri game, but like Alice said, it's just hard to make her struggle. You can't really struggle as Ciri if you can time travel and you can teleport and you're the best with the sword. How are you going to make her be in any kind of trouble if she can just fix it? So either you'd have to put her in a position where she can't use her powers, or in a position where to solve it, her powers are useless. So you could maybe make Avalach kind of the big bad, because I think in The Witcher 3 they kind of dropped the ball on who he was, because Avalach is not a good man. And the way he's shown in The Witcher 3 is like, oh, okay, well, I just want to save my homeworld, and I already knew this was going to happen. I'm opening the gate, and then I'm disappearing. But in the books, it's very clear. Eridan even tells you as much, is that Avalach is an En-Severn. He is an elven sage, and they have their own codes and their own rules. They do what they do for them, nobody else. And Avalach himself also doesn't really care about his people. Like, he has a clear link to Lara Doran because he loved her specifically. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the people around him, he has this sort of disdain. He eventually sits in a boat with this elven woman, who may or may not be the woman that we meet in The Witcher 3. And Ciri comes up to him, and he just kind of shoos her. Not Ciri, but the elven woman. And the elven woman's like, oh, I'm so upset about that. And sits down Ciri, and they just kind of go on a boat ride for a while. Avalach has no interest in what she has to say. He just plays his flute for a while, and then they go back. Like, he's the most useless guy in the world when it comes to actually being a good person at all. And he's also not really interested necessarily in helping the king, because if he is what he says he is, and he is, because he makes some on-point predictions, he could have seen this coming. And he would have seen this coming. He would have seen his king die. That's just a fact. Which means that for his plans to work out, the king had to die, and he didn't care, nor did he tell anybody. And Eridan thinks it's his fault because he might have given him the potion that made his thing go up. But he's not sure. Like, Eridan looks really shocked when it happens. Like, what? He's dead? I didn't know. What? And then he just bonks his head on a bridge and falls in the water because he's very smart.
That was the best moment of Lady of the Lake.
And I have this theory as well that because if you want to make the games work with the books, you kind of have to have this theory. Because in The Witcher 3, you have this scene where they oniromance what happened to the king. And you have the king sitting in a chair going, poison. And then Eridan picking up the poison vial and going, ha ha. epic evil one-liner, and that's the end of that scene. And Avalak's like, yep, that's what happened. That's what happened. Don't ask me any more questions, because that's just point blank not what happens. In the books, the king dies in Ciri's arms slowly. Like they sit there, it's like, oh, you're so much like Lara Doran, and I have a strange infatuation with what could be my daughter. Let's not talk about it. I love you, bye. And then Ciri goes, this sucks, and leaves. Eredin is at that point already running around near the water, presumably going, well, I don't know what bridge to bonk my head on. And that's all he does. He's not one-lining anything. And Avalak oneromancing somebody to show what happened could so clearly be him just influencing everything. Like, he's like, okay, I gotta make him believe that this is what happened. It's not what happened. I know that. They know that. But I'm just gonna show him. And if we go with that, it means that either he convinced Ciri not to tell anybody, or that he also did a little bit of messing with her mind as well. And if you add all of that up, even in The Witcher 3, without anybody telling you, Avalak is the worst guy. Because he just says, I gotta make my plan work. I'm just gonna fuck all of you.
I think Ciri believed that Eredin poisoned the king.
Yeah, but she was there when he died. That's the thing. So, like, the scene that Avalak showed, she knows that didn't happen.
She didn't know if Eredin, gave him the vial on purpose, and if the vial was supposed to kill the king or not.
No,
I think she didn't know that.
But she did know that scene didn't happen. She knew that for sure, 100%.
Oh yeah,
because she was there. So either way, she knew that something fucky was going on. She could have also thought to herself, I was like, okay, well, Avalak kind of knows what he's doing, and we do need to convince this guy, so I'll just let it slide.
Yeah, that's true.
I also don't really care about Eredin, so he can take the fall. I don't care. But either way, Avalak is lying about something, and he's doing it for his own goals. He disappears after the end of The Witcher 3. What is he doing? What's he doing? We don't know.
Exhuming Lara Doran.
Well, he's just leaving Lara Doran's child behind and not telling anybody anything. So that's super shady. So that could be a story right there.
Yeah, that's an idea.
One thing I know for sure is that if there is a major expansion in Gwent, I'll be ready to pay Jinzee to narrate it for me. This was perfect.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's been a while since I read these books. I recently reread The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. So this was a lot of new information and old information that you just forgot about, but it was narrated in a perfect way. Like, I was just sitting here like, holy smokes! It's a comedy show. Like, she's great. Like, we need her to be our permanent guest.
Thank you. I think I did this at some point during I think I narrated what Amir wanted to do with Ciri and why at a Twitch con at some point, and they said the same thing. So maybe I'll just make this a series.
But to be honest, I think that if they do The Witcher 4, or however the game is gonna be called, they might wanna go the cyberpunk route. Meaning they give you the choice to shape your own character. It's gonna be named V or something like that, and you will have a choice between what school of The Witcher, how the character is gonna look like. A lot more customization options than you have in the Witcher games. Or they could say, screw that, we're gonna do it exactly the same way we did it in the previous games, and they're just gonna choose another character. And my personal favorite is always young Vesemir.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people want to see his story, especially because we have Go on.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is, when Vesemir was young, there was the world looked much differently than it does during the time of late Geralt and Ciri. Witchers were much more common. There was more monsters. It was still the somehow colonization period. The northern realms were not as established, I think, so it would be much different.
Yeah, what the chat says as well, it would be really cool if either you get a little bit of Vesemir finding Geralt at the end as well. Like, I think it would have to be Vesemir's story specifically, like everything that he did. But it would be really cool if they at least ended it with Vesemir going, I have a new child. I will name him Geralt. That'd be like a nice little
Plot
nudge.
twist.
Do you
yeah.
think Visenna didn't choose a name for Geralt before
Well,
she left him or whatever?
I don't think she did. Because I know that you have, like, in the Witcher Netflix show, you have little Geralt going, I am little Geralt and you are Visenna. But in the books, and in the show as well, for some reason, he specifically says, you didn't give me that name. Vesemir gave me that name. So the Netflix show just contradicts themselves on the spot. But yeah,
the show.
I'm pretty sure that he was also left as a baby, not as like an already grown child, because I think child Geralt in the show is already too old to go through the trials. So yeah.
Also, I think it's mentioned somewhere in the first two books that Geralt really sees Vesemir as his father. Like, everyone has a father, and Vesemir is mine. There's nothing weird about it. He says something like that.
Yeah. I mean, Vesemir's basically his dad. He did everything for him. And he still comes back to him now. It's like, and he didn't have a mother. There's like a story, I think it's A Road of No Return it's called, which for some reason wasn't printed in the English versions, but I think Czech does have it.
Yeah, it does.
And it's about the parents of Geralt. And that's Corin, I think it is, and Visenna. And you never really hear what happens to his father, but given that you meet Visenna in the books and she's alone, Corin probably just died because he was a human as far as we knew. So he died, and I guess Visenna really didn't want to raise a child on her own because she was a druidess, and just kind of left him. I don't know what you would think about that as a child. When you grow up, you realize that you were left behind, but I think whoever raises you the most is just your parent, period.
Like, the whole thing about The Witcher, like, one of the main themes is just found family versus biological family.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah, exactly, because Yennefer, Geralt, Ciri are a highly dysfunctional but still a family.
Yep.
Yeah.
On that note, I think we can move to the next segment, is because we've been talking for 2 hours already, so we kind of need to rush it now. I don't want to keep Jinzee just chatting with us the whole morning. She probably has things to do.
I have a stream, like, whenever this ends the streaming, so it's easy.
Okay, easy game. 5-hour podcast confirmed.
Okay, let's go.
I would love that.
I wanted to briefly,
Maybe
very briefly talk about competitive Gwent, because it's the Masters week, right? Gwent Masters is happening next weekend. And the only question I want to ask about that is, are you guys going to watch? Do you guys have your own picks? Are you interested in the tournament? I know that Elis is because she's traveling there.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna talk more than Jinzee, so I'll let Jinzee go first.
Well, I always watch, but that's all I have to say about it, really. I just really enjoy watching Masters, even outside of the games. I really love the production value that goes into all of the Masters, because State of Product really pulls out all the stops. Obviously going for Tailbot, because that's always my pick. So, Elis. So yeah, definitely watching, but Elis, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going, so I'm going to be at the unofficial viewing party. I've wanted to go ever since I watched Challenger 4, basically. I wanted to be there, and I wanted to meet the players and the casters, and if possible, the rest of the community, and I'm incredibly grateful and happy that I have the chance to do so. I am biased when it comes to the picks because I'm in a team. I have 3 teammates competing for the title of a possibly best player in the world thus far. But I do have a favorite outside of the team, which of course is Tailbot, because everyone who knows me just knows at this point.
Yeah, it's Villa, and if Villa is not available, then it's Tailbot.
That's a simplified version of things, I guess. But yeah.
I wasn't sure if I should ask about this, but how do you feel about Hana-chan not traveling to Poland to participate in the tournament? So basically, I'm not sure if
It's,
Jinzee knows what's
I
going on.
don't.
So basically, Hana-chan is a Chinese player, and originally he didn't qualify. Life Coach did. Life Coach won the first challenger, and he
Declined, didn't he?
and then he
Mm.
he lost interest in Gwen, so he declined, and the next person would qualify in his stead was Hana-chan. So I just imagine Hana-chan being like, yeah, I'm getting there. And then 2 weeks later, the whole coronavirus thing started, and he was denied a visa.
That's horrible.
Oh, damn, that's terrible, dude.
It's very unfortunate.
Okay. Traveling at your own risk, like, is one thing. I think denying someone a visa because the coronavirus is a thing is not necessarily okay. Because it's already traveled places. It's not like, oh, you're from China, so you will have this virus. Like, that's not how it works. I think that might be going a bit too far. I won't lie. That really sucks. I almost want to say let him do it like from afar, but yeah, I don't know if that is even possible.
Yeah, I think it's impossible for people from East
Yeah.
Asia to get EU visa right now. Because, for instance, we know it's not about the Masters, it's about the TwitchCon EU that also has been cancelled because of the outbreak. And we know somebody, you probably know him too, Bibo, the Gwen streamer from Japan. So he was going to travel with his wife to Europe to visit like a bunch of places, TwitchCon among other things, and then basically his airline said it's not gonna happen. I think some hotels canceled their reservation as well. So it's like it's almost impossible right now to travel from East Asia to Europe.
Oh, that's terrible. That really sucks. That's too bad. Seriously, I had not heard about that at all. I don't know what are they gonna do with his spot at that point.
The next person with the highest crown points score is qualified. So Kacper something.
Kasper something. He's from Poland. He's pretty good at ladder. He's like constantly somewhere on the first or second page. I don't know how he's doing in tournaments, but I'm pretty interested in like how he's gonna do, because last challenger, a person that nobody expected could make it that far.
Magpie.
Magpie, who got in through a qualifier, actually won. He 3-0'd the previous champion, Damorkis, so you never know. But it's still like very, very unfortunate that that Hana-chan couldn't be there, because I'm pretty sure that he really, really wanted to be there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I made the joke about it, but it must have been a true roller coaster for him, because one day you hear that the guy who was supposed to participate declined, so you are gonna play, and you must be thrilled, and then 2 weeks later, because of something that you cannot control in any way, you get the news that you won't be able to play either. And I think that's also what's gonna happen to you during the Open, because next month we have the first Open of this year. And 2 Chinese players qualified, and I think if things don't calm down, they won't be able to play either.
And they won't calm down. Not now. I give it at least a few months before anything is going to change.
I think someone actually said it gets worse in summer.
No, I think the expectations are that it's gonna die out during the summer months, because but that's what's happening with the flu virus. But we don't know yet. It's a completely different thing, so everything could happen.
Yeah, I spoke to my mom about that. She's also on the virus watch, the international WHO thing here in SA, so she needs to detect the next flu virus strain every year when it mutates. But apparently the heat is really not going to help at all. Like, if the coronavirus is still a thing, it's not going to stop it. Definitely not. It's not going to die out like that. But I think we're going to reach a point where either everyone has had it at some point, or at least some sort of herd immunity is in place. Because right now the flu is a thing, so people have herd immunity, those who get shots anyway. But the coronavirus, even though it's not that deadly, but deadlier than the flu, we haven't built up any sort of immunity against it yet, and therefore we're all vulnerable, and that's only the problem, really. And everyone getting it at the same time is bad, because our hospitals, at least here in SA, we're not ready for that at all. But anyway, Next question, Meisenberg. I guess you don't want to talk about coronavirus now.
Merchants of viruses.
Oh god.
Actually, I wanted to move to the personal Q&A section because there isn't really much talk about the tournament. It still has to take place. Like, everyone has their favorites. I'm always rooting for Freddy because Freddy is a memer. Like, sometimes he just brings cards to the tournament where he thinks it has like 1% chance of working. I'm gonna try it out. So that's what I always appreciate. But personal Q&A section. One thing I really wanted to know is, how did you get into the Witcher universe? What is your Witcher story?
I'll let Jinzee to start.
Okay. It's actually kind of awkward. Pirated Witcher 2. So I was actually at a LAN party, and unfortunately I was kind of in like, I have a lot of depressive episodes, unfortunately, and I was like in one of those, which also caused massive insomnia. So even though it was a LAN party, everyone was going to bed except for me. And one of my friends went, okay, well, you're staying up. I got like the perfect game for you. It's super pirated, but you can play this one. And it was The Witcher 2. So I started that up, and anyway, I never went to bed that day. And I pretty much almost finished the entire game, like the first line, in one night, and took it home with me. And I continued to pirate The Witcher 1, and then I pirated the books. I pirated everything. And then when I actually got some money, and I bought the books. I bought The Witcher 2. I bought The Witcher 1. It's actually funny because I went to the game store and I put The Witcher 2 box on the counter. I was like, this one, please. And the guy stared at me. He's like, is it for a friend? I was like, nope, that's for me. He's like, oh, well, girls don't usually buy these kinds of games. And I...
please.
Oh god.
Deep sighs. But I finally did buy it at that point. And like I said, I don't have many funds. So this was basically my life for like the next few years. I just replayed the games, and then I reread the books, and then I replayed the games again, and then I reread the books again. So there's a lot of just me sitting in the Witcher world for the rest of my life, and it actually pulled me straight out of my depression, which was great. So I just I was just Geralting around for several years, and then I just never stopped. And then The Witcher 3 came out, and I was like, yeah, I can play this 50 million times too, which is great. So that's me.
My stories. I don't know. Quite similar, but also different. Basically, I was dating this guy briefly in senior year of high school, and he liked The Witcher, and he showed me some like funny bits from the books. It was like the dwarves talking, basically. Because in the translation, it actually is quite funny. And then there was this offer on GOG to get Witcher 2 as well for free. So he was like, yeah, I'm downloading this. Do you want it too? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Because at that time, I was playing Skyrim. It was like the first big video game that I actually played, funnily enough. And one evening, he was like teasing me about not even playing the game, because we were like talking about it or whatever. I was like, okay, hold up. So I just saved and quitted Skyrim, and basically because he dared me, I loaded up Witcher 2. And I was in love within like 5 minutes. That was it.
Is that when Jorva showed up? You can tell me.
Not really. I think it was when I chose the dialogue option, like, that's really funny. When Manoj was interrogating me, and what Geralt said instead, it was "fuck you," and I just found that really hilarious, because like the way it's written, where CDPR just kind of doesn't tell you what Geralt will actually say, and I just found that really cool. And also like just him straight up saying "fuck you," I don't know, it did it for me for some reason.
He's very blunt. Geralt was the hook.
I have to tell you, the Gwent taunts are the spiritual successor of that line. Because it says something like "thank you," and then "I'll kill you."
Oh yeah.
Like, the Gwent taunts are exactly like that. You think, "Oh, this sounds nice." Click. Oh shit.
I will destroy your house after this match. Wait, that's not what I meant.
Like, you're playing as Erden, a good game. you'll make a good slave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to clarify, guys, when Jinzee was pirating The Witcher 2, I think it was still legal to pirate?
To what?
To pirate games? Or to play
Right.
pirated games? I think it was still legal, or at least tolerated.
Oh yeah, this was a long time ago. The Witcher 2 had just come out, basically.
Yeah, I think they
So,
changed the laws on downloading illegal content like a few years ago, maybe. And they are still
Maybe.
not doing anything about that. It's like, okay, just
I
because
couldn't afford
Brussels
games,
asked us
so I
to.
pirated. Okay, I bought them afterwards. It's fine.
Piracy is kind of legal in my country. It's
I
like,
mean-
as long as you're not like making money out of it, you can pirate whatever the fuck you want.
I mean, you
basically.
have a pirate party in your parliament.
Yeah, that's true.
Trying to get one.
To be honest, we also have a pirate party, and the leader of the pirate party is an ex-porn star.
Oh well, there we go.
Take
Oh,
that, Czech
nice.
Republic.
Yeah, Piratenpartij.
I mean, our politics are kind of a joke, like in and of itself.
It's always a joke in every country.
But
No
there's
worries.
no point. Gotta admit
Yeah.
that.
Oh, BG says she's not the leader anymore. Yeah, out of all people, I knew that Baby Joseph would know that. Like that's the thing he knows. That's his field of interest. Next question, Jinzee, how did you become the queen of lore? Like when did you decide? Okay, I'm gonna start making YouTube content or start streaming The Witcher games on Twitch, because whenever I need to know something about The Witcher lore, even for this podcast, I'm like Jinzee or The Witcher George. These two channels always.
Honestly, I just wanted to talk about The Witcher. That's it. I kind of have this thing on my YouTube channel where whenever something becomes popular, I stop doing it. I was
Yeah,
getting
same.
really big with my World of Warcraft videos. Like I was skyrocketing and I hated it, so I stopped doing World of Warcraft. And then I just picked something else that I really like to talk about, which was The Witcher. So I think I started with the Triss and Yennefer stories. So I was really new at just telling entire stories, taking it out of my books and whatever. I just wrote the whole thing down. I didn't even paraphrase, basically. And it made the videos really, really long. So they were like half-hour long bits, I think. So I've definitely improved in that. And I think the main reason I continue to do it at that point is because I wanted to make it better. I wanted to kind of make it on the level of my World of Warcraft videos. And those basically became popular because they were short and they were to the point. So that's what I was going for, but I still wanted it to be like a good story. Which is where we are now. Like I've basically done everything I wanted in terms of storytelling, which is why I stopped doing lore content now, I guess. I did the Crones last, and I was very happy with that one. And yeah, now The Witcher is popular, so I'm jumping off that bandwagon. But I still really like to just talk about The Witcher, and I think that will never change. I know everything about The Witcher, like off the top of my head. I know everything. And I think that makes it really pleasant to talk to other people that also know everything. So I like talking to Ellis. I like talking to Raven, because like I'll have a reference about something and they'll be like, oh yeah, I know what that means. And like we have like this whole thing, like everything's a reference and we all understand each other, and it's just great. I don't know, it's just a cozy thing. Up to what happened with the Netflix show, obviously. It was just always a very cozy, comfortable community where everyone was nice, everyone was interested. We could have a different opinion and it wouldn't matter because we could still have like a nice, calm conversations. Like, oh, okay, you like this, you like that. That's cool. No worries. Like, you know, what's your take on this? So, yeah, I kind of just stuck around. That's that.
And how difficult is it to produce The Witcher content on a regular basis? At least was.
It takes a really long time. And I think maybe that's more the way that I do it. The way that I like to make lore content is that I get the story, the entire lore story, and then I try to go a little bit further because, again, the same way that I did with the World of Warcraft, I didn't want to upload something that everybody already had. Like, what was I adding? I wanted to add something extra. So in this case, it's like, okay, what is the reference here? What's the theory here? Is there something interesting I could say about this that maybe nobody else thought about yet? So, for example, in the Whispering Hillock story, so the Crohn's video I uploaded was the whole Hecate line, because I never heard anything about that ever. I was trying to figure out who it was, who might be the reference, what they might be to each other. Instead of just going, this is a story that we have, this is what's in The Witcher 3, and there you go, I'll barf it on the screen, and you can just watch that. I kind of try to make it my own story. So that takes really long, because I dive into really weird kind of mystery holes. Like, I know everything about like the Greek pantheon at this point just from researching. So like, yeah, I guess it's broadening my horizon, but it means that, for example, the Crohn's video took at least a month to put together properly.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean that does mean that I obviously can't upload much, which is something that I'd really like to change as well. But yeah, if you want to go in depth, then that's how long it takes, basically.
Yeah, that's commitment. That's great. And I mean, how many times have you actually read the novels for interest's sake?
I kind of lost count, but at least 30 times.
Every single novel in the series, like 8 of them, right?
Yeah. I think at the start it was also, well, first of all, it was all I had, so I just kept rereading them. But then when I started making videos as well, I would generally just reread the whole series every time I made a video. I kind of stopped doing that when I realized that most of what I needed, I could just get off the top of my head anyway. But yeah, I just reread it every time, just for the smallest details, just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So
I thought I was being a nerd when I read the whole Harry Potter saga 6 times, but holy shit.
Yeah, 30 times, that's excessive to say the least.
Yeah, that's 240 books, right? Just by reading every single one of them 30 times.
yeah, well, I read reasonably
Not bad.
fast. So
Wow.
If you could encourage a Gwent player like me to read them, how would you do it?
a Gwen player.
Any
I
Gwent
guess,
player watching?
I guess in this case, the Gwen doesn't give you the whole story. If you want to know why Yennefer is as powerful as she is, if you want to know why everybody hates Vilgefortz, if you want to know why Regis is like the best person in the world, if you want to know why you don't want to sleep with Triss all the time, maybe, read the books. Read the books. There's also, yes, there's sex. There you go. There's sex in the books, but there's also really cool fight scenes, and Geralt's a badass. Geralt's just a straight up badass, and then he meets Regis, and then they badass through the rest of the book together. It's great.
Yeah, like if you want to know what's happening on this, on that card art, also like that might be a hook for somebody.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Alice, because recently, even though I played The Witcher 2 like 6 times, which is nothing compared to how many times Jinzee has played it, I was looking at cards in Gwent, and I noticed that Shillard card has 2 other characters in it. I was like, oh wait, that's Asira. That's Rainwald killing her. Like,
Yeah.
how did I miss it?
Happened in Witcher 2. That happened in Witcher 2.
It happened in The Witcher 2, like towards the end of the game. Like when the moment you got to Loch Muin, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that part. And I was like, I played this game 6 times, how on earth did I miss it?
Yep. And I mean, at the same time, can I just say that the Asira death was really anticlimactic?
It was.
Yeah, it was. She deserved better.
Yeah, she really did.
Yeah, definitely considering the role she played in the Lodge and the books overall. Just getting stabbed by an ambassador, that's kind of sad. I have a much different question now, because Alice, there's one thing I wanted to know. How did you join TA?
Well, that's also a story and a half. Not really. I was in Ryan Gotrick's channel, and I was just like minding my business in a chat because I was a mod and stuff. And Henno, the the founder of Arethusa, stopped by. And Ryan was like, yeah, we were actually like looking for people, and Elis, you should apply. And then he sort of pushed me into sending Henno an email. And so I did. I sent him my portfolio and all that. And he answered that he's like really impressed. And he would like to do a call with me and our content manager, Swandive. So we did that, and I thought I made a complete idiot out of myself, but then they were like, well, okay, you're hired.
It's always like that.
Yeah.
You go to an interview and you afterwards you think, oh my god, I said this, I said that. They're never gonna hire me. No way. 30 minutes later, like, so would you like to work for us?
Yeah. I was like, I was pulling some ideas out of my ass because one was like introducing me to their website and all that, and told me what she would like to change and make and all that. I was like, well, I can do this and this and this, and really just basically just pulled stuff out of my ass, like I always do, and it worked. and I got in, and it was the best. I love the team very, very much, and every day I'm grateful that I'm in it, and it's fantastic. It's a great experience.
Quick follow-up question, because you said, quote, that you pulled things out of your ass.
Yes.
Are you actually technically able to do all those things you told them you are gonna do for the team? Or is it like lying on your resume, like, I can do this, I can do that, I have no idea what I'm saying, but I can do it?
Well, I kind of did them.
Okay.
Just
So it's not like pulling things out of your ass, it's more like, I'm just gonna name things that I know I can do. Because a lot of people in a very similar situation will be like, okay, I'm just gonna, fetch them some lies. Like, I'm gonna tell them I can do this and I can do that, and I'm a super talented person, and then they ask you to do it, and you're like, oh shit.
Now, like, some of these things are still in progress. For example, for the website, because hold up a minute.
Don't interrupt me. I'm talking about my team.
It's just my dad.
I could see some angry words.
Some of the stuff is still in progress. They're kind of started working on already with the 3D looking propaganda I was talking about earlier. And yeah, there's still like ideas that I have that I started working on and haven't finished because something else came into the picture, or stuff that I have sort of like on paper and I know that I can do it, but I just haven't had the time and the resources to do it yet. But I'm very confident about anything that I told them I can do, because frankly I just don't like lying. So I didn't tell them to that I can do anything that I can't do. And there's still a bunch of things that I want to do that I don't know how, but I haven't felt confident about teasing something like that because I don't know if I can do it and I don't know if I'll ever have the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I think most of us as content creators can relate. There's so many things you want to do, but you don't really know how.
Mm-hmm.
Like, take this podcast, for instance. At some point, I made the decision to start doing the podcast, and then I asked myself, how on earth do I do a podcast? I don't know anything about that. So I actually ask people who have more experience, and that's how you learn, and then in the end, you are able to do it.
I mean, you gotta try something to learn, right?
Oh yeah, learning every day. Another question that we have on our list. Oh, that's something I really want to know. Jinzee, any chance of ever doing another round of Gwent lore videos? Because let me clarify. One thing that I really loved about CDPR was doing the Beyond the Frame videos, where they explain the lore behind certain cards, and I know that you've been doing that as well.
Yeah. I honestly, I might do that. I think if I do make those, I think they're for the moment going to be, unfortunately, Patreon exclusive. And that's going to sound really weird, I know that, but I genuinely don't like having too many viewers. That sounds weird. What I mean is I don't I don't really like to have like massive attention all the time. I like to have these close one-on-one conversations with people. Like if you have a question, so I can answer you, and I don't kind of lose sight of who's watching me. I will eventually make those public again. So like it's not like please sign up to my Patreon or else. No, I'll eventually make those public, but I think I'll do it after the whole Witcher hype has died down a little bit. If you personally want to see them when I make them, I don't mind just sending them over to you. But yeah, it's kind of I like to keep it a close-knit family, because like especially in my community, I know pretty much everyone's name. I know what they're doing. I know stuff about them, right? They're friends, they're family. And I'm kind of trying to protect that, I guess. But I'll still make them. Like I said, I'll still make them. Just secretly.
Sneakily.
Yes.
Just like the podcast.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any chance of sneakily streaming Gwent anytime soon?
Oh, I don't think that would be too secret, would it? I think maybe if they have like a new scenario or things like that, or a new expansion, I think I'd definitely give it a look. I streamed it when the Fear expansion came out for a little bit, and I liked the scenarios. I thought they were really cool. But what I would really like to play, which I really enjoy in Gwent, is actually Arena. And the Arena hasn't really had a lot of love in a while.
Yeah.
I know they have like the events sometimes where you have like a special Arena mode. But I'd really like to see them do a little bit more with events like that, where there's just like maybe just a special scenario where you play against an NPC or something, or you have to have like the puzzles like they had in Thronebreaker. I thought those were amazing. But yeah, if there's a good Arena mode, I'll play that.
Actually, they said they want to rework Arena this year.
Good. I'm looking forward
We
to
don't
it.
have any estimates. We don't know when it's gonna happen, how it's gonna look like. But they did acknowledge the fact that Arena is not doing very well after Homecoming, and they need to look into it and change it.
Okay.
Okay, next
Well,
question, and that's for both of you actually. If you had any advice for CDPR when it comes to Gwent and lore, what would it be? Can be anything.
Hire me. That's it. Let's go.
Yeah, pretty much. Hire Jinzee.
I thought you were gonna say hire me as well.
I might have
No,
actually applied.
I honestly, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that. I did post this again secretly, but at some point there was maybe a thing, but I don't know if it's because Gwent wasn't really doing too well at the time, or they changed directions or whatever, but they never actually did anything with it. We had like a short talk basically. And then nothing happened. I wrote an entire kind of a background story to the blood curse, basically. With the whole dead love, I made up a bunch of vampires. I basically wrote my own lore for it. And I honestly do feel like it would be nice if you had just straight up lore with like a little bit of artwork on the side, maybe to illustrate it. Because I know that if you go through the book with the rewards, you do get little pieces of lore for any specific season. But I think it's a little bit dry to, first of all, do it that way. And second of all, if you don't play a lot, like I don't play a lot at the moment. Every so often I'll log on, do a few games. But that means that I miss out on that lore. It's like I can't read all of them. I guess I could just look it up online somewhere. But I think it would be nice to just have like a little story with it, with everything, like with every new expansions. Like this is why this is happening, and this is what these people are. I think we talked about that earlier already as well. But yeah, I just like to have a little bit more story in Gwent in general. I think as it is, it's very bare bones. I liked the seasonal things like the Phoenix fight. I thought that was cool. Phoenixes technically they're mythical in The Witcher, by the way. Geralt lines it up with the same thing as golden dragons at some point in the conversation. So, you can go any which way, really. I would really like to see stories. Thanks.
I think in the end, I would just advise them to try to stay true to the universe as much as possible. Like, obviously, they are gonna bend things for the sake of playability or for the sake of being attractive to new players or whatever. But don't break it. Don't break it, because the lore is a big chunk of the game. It's one of the main things that makes the game unique from other games of this genre. And I just don't want them to see hurt themselves and potentially the game by just going way too far with what they make up for the lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very sound advice. We have a couple of questions from the audience. The first one being from Lionheart. Doesn't surprise me at all. Elis and Jinzee, will you be watching season 2 of the TV series to see what changes and if they like it, if you like it or not, and if it's more lore friendly?
I will be watching it. I actually really like doing the comparisons. I actually think they're pretty fun to do. So I'll do those. I don't know if I'm gonna ever do a review of the show again, but I will definitely watch them. Just because I'm curious as well, right? I want to know where they're going. Maybe they, at some point, they just right the ship and follow the lore entirely. I don't think it's even possible to do that anymore, but you know, they might have really good ideas that they had to set up in season 1 and that kind of come out in all their glory in season 2. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I want to see it too, if only for having more things to brag about. But I don't know. It's just I just at this point I just want to know. I just want to know how they're gonna continue with the mess that they started with season 1.
Like, the first good sign is that they actually fired the person responsible for costumes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, thank the Lord.
So hopefully
Really?
it's gonna look a little bit more acceptable.
It wasn't even just the garbage bags for Nilfgaard, by the way. There were more costumes that made me
Oh,
go,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing?
Same.
I think there is a couple of videos made by Shadiversity and similar YouTubers who are basically commenting on the costumes and what they could be and what they were in the show.
Yeah.
Moving on,
For
another
sure.
question from the audience. Are there any lore-based franchises that you enjoy, and how deep did you fall down the rabbit hole compared to the Witcher universe?
I'll let Ellis go first because I probably have a lot to say.
Harry Potter when I was younger. Because I read it 6 times, so I knew basically everything there was to know at that time. However, it got way too popular when I was kind of out of it already. And then J.K. Rowling just continued to ruin the universe entirely. So at this point, I just try to distance myself as far as I can. But I
Yes.
still know quite a lot about like the OG story, the OG 7 books and everything surrounding them. So that was a thing, I guess. I really enjoy Elder Scrolls. I enjoy the lore, although I don't know as much as I do about The Witcher. But I would like to learn more at some point, probably. It's definitely interesting to me. It puts interesting spins on like classic fantasy races as well. Like orcs are actually elves and dwarves are actually elves, blah blah blah. So that's quite interesting to me. Other than that, I guess Song of Ice and Fire. Although it's the same case, I haven't read the books yet, so I don't know as much as I could know. That's still ahead of me as well. But yeah, I enjoy fantasy stuff in general.
I did read a little bit of Song of Ice and Fire and things like that. Stopped halfway through. It's actually not my favorite. I think my most favorite fantasy series after The Witcher is the Stormlight Archive, which is a series of books as well. That one's not done yet. Like he's still writing that, but the writer of that series, Brandon Sanderson, actually writes really, really quickly. So we'll never run into the unfortunate events of Game of Thrones ever. And it's basically a kind of sci-fi mix with magic sort of world where you have like this one group of people that has special powers and they are just kind of discovering it. And there's like there's this whole prophecy going on with. Yeah, I won't go too deep into that. I didn't go super, super deep into that because I don't think I ever want to do that again. Because I think if they ever make it into a series, I'm just it's going to ruin it for me. So I'm reading it. I'm loving it. I try not to write lore about it. I don't think I ever will. But if you were ever looking for anything fantasy that is well written, that has excellent rules, actual ground rules that they follow throughout the whole thing with illustrations and interesting characters, Stormlight Archive. there's a lot to read. You start with, I think, The Way of Kings. And then you have like side stories as well with each of the characters inside the books that have like their own little background story, which honestly, it's probably one of the best book series I've ever read, fantasy or otherwise.
And I think on that note, we are going to slowly move towards the end of the podcast. So now is your time to sell out.
Oh dear.
Where can people find you if they need to? Where can they watch your content or listen to your podcast?
Well, the podcast is on Patreon, but if you just want to watch me on Twitch, then I'm Jinzee on Twitch, and I'm the Proper Bird on YouTube, which does still have a lot of Witcher stories and things like that on it. But if you just want to ask me questions about The Witcher on Twitch, I'm always open for that. No worries.
Elis?
I'm Thunderbird 138 on Twitter. I am ElisTheThunderbird, just one word, on Twitch. And there's a link to my Discord channel on my Twitch description. So if you want to join that, you can through this. I don't have a YouTube channel because I don't know anything about video editing, so so that's not really a thing. Do I have any other socials worth mentioning? Probably not. I have an Instagram that I can like give you if you ask.
Nicely.
Yeah, of course.
Secret Instagram.
Yeah, your turn.
Not much. You can find me on Twitch. My name is underneath here, I think, Tia Beastie, and there you can find all the links and stay updated when I finally one day publish a book. Hopefully. And thanks, guys. This was very fun, and I personally learned quite a lot about lore today. So I'm a better person by the end of this podcast.
Hopefully you are gonna switch the teams now. Now that you know the background story of Triss, you are gonna be a proper Teamian person.
If anything, maybe Team Shani.
Shani is so cute. Seriously.
Like the underdog. Yeah, I might just do that to piss off a few people like him.
Okay, guys, I don't really have to tell you where you can find me because you are in my channel. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this moment to promote the podcast once again. So guys, if you wanna stay in touch also off stream, you can follow us on Twitter at Novigrad Podcast. If you want to get access to early announcements, you can join our Discord, and all previous episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and a couple of smaller platforms. This episode is gonna be uploaded there in a couple of hours. So with that being said, Jinzee, Elis, Tia, thanks for being here. Really, really appreciate having you on the show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being here. Thank you for having us.
And chat, thanks for participating. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for chatting with us. We'll see you guys later. So yeah, we're gonna rate somebody in a minute. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you guys later.
Bye.